Chapter 1093. The sky had just brightened when he arrived. Although his tone was gentle, there was a hint of urgency in it. Something big must have happened.
Come in.
At Prince Mo's command, Huifeng floated in through the window and bowed without looking sideways. Your Highness, something big has happened. Mo Lian turned to stare at him. Why are you so alarmed? Huifeng hurriedly spilled the beans and quickly said, This morning, Simon Manor's high priest announced an exciting piece of news. He said that he divined that a bloodfire phoenix egg will be born in the mystic beast forest within the next few days. Simon Manor, one of the 4 great manors, had never cared about the mundane world and was even more reclusive than Yushio Manor. Why would it suddenly? What else did he say? Huifeng shook his head. Nothing. He only said that the bloodfire phoenix egg will be born in the mystic beast forest at a certain time, but he didn't mention the specific time. Even so, it's already caused all sides to become restless and restless. The 2 sects, 5 factions, 4 great manors, and 8 great patrician families have all made a move. In addition, aside from Shuntian Prefecture, the other 5 prefectures have also made a move. Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture in particular have each sent an extremely powerful team to the Mystic Beast Forest, planning to fight over the Bloodfire Phoenix Egg. Mo Lian's handsome face darkened slightly, but then she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression softened. Let them be. In any case, Jojo is still inside the secret realm right now, so he won't run into those people. Yes.
Keep a close eye on them.
Mo Lian curled his lips into a cold smile. Come inform me when the people of the 5 prefectures are fighting to the death and both sides are wounded. Huifeng cracked a smile and nodded in understanding. Yes, Your Highness. At the same time, Arbor, who was completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world, was quietly immersed in the world of cultivation. Inside his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been rolled into a ball suddenly lit up. The 6th jade slip flew out and unfurled. Lines of small characters appeared on it and were quickly absorbed by Arbor. Xiao Mu abruptly opened her eyes, joy creeping into her eyes. The 6th jade slip of the golden talisman jade tome was opened at this moment. Arbor sat cross-legged inside the defensive barrier and took out a gold-beaded talisman pen. He summoned a dozen blank ebony pieces and began to draw new talismans. There were quite a few new talismans that he had learned, such as the teleportation talisman, the earth talisman, the wood talisman, and the thunder talisman. In addition, there was also a strange and special talisman, rapid cultivation talisman. She first drew a teleportation talisman. She had already tested the magical effects of this kind of talisman before. That's right, it was inside the Great Sea Monastery's pacification pagoda. Xiao Mu took out 2 talismans brimming with blue light and tossed one to Aoyi. Afterwards, the 2 people disappeared from courtesan Zheng's sight. At that time, they had used teleportation talismans to directly move from inside the pagoda to the monastery's rear courtyard. After that, she quietly went to the Nimpan Tower from the backyard, looking for an opportunity to angrily insult Princess Anam. The 2 teleportation talismans from before were the welfare demonstration talismans given by the golden talisman jade tome. Arbor had always regretted that she couldn't draw a teleportation talisman because she thought it was very useful. Now, she could finally draw one. Teleportation talisman. Move to a single person within 2 li. This was the property of a high-level talisman. Arbor suspected that when she could draw yellow-grade or even black-grade talismans in the future, she might be able to modify this teleportation talisman into a directional movement. Chapter 1094. However, it wasn't bad to be able to move 2 li in a fixed direction now. It was just that sometimes, if she wasn't oriented, she might fall into a nearby pond. But that wasn't a problem. It was fine as long as the teleportation talisman was useful. Arbor pursed her lips, unable to hide her good mood. Squatting inside her defensive barrier, she carefully drew the talisman in her hand. As for the Thunder Spirit Talisman, Wood Spirit Talisman, and Earth Spirit Talisman, their effects were similar to the Fire Spirit Talisman and Water Spirit Talisman, but their attributes were different. In this way, She had gathered all of her high-grade 5-spirit talismans. Even if she couldn't comprehend the power of the 5 spirits, with the 5-spirit talisman, she could still trick others in a battle. Thus, this kind of 5-spirit talisman was extremely popular in the middle 6 prefectures and even the upper 3 provinces. Because high-grade talismans could be activated with mystic energy, even a low-level mystic cultivator could inject mystic energy to use this kind of 5-spirit talisman. It was definitely an excellent talisman for protecting one's life at home. After drawing several dozen of each of the newly learned talismans, Arbor started to ponder how to draw that strange rapid cultivation talisman. Talismans and talismans were basically born from the same root, so to Arbor, they were all the same when drawn. It was just that most talisman masters were more vicious and evil, so they were looked down upon by people of the righteous path. However, this kind of rapid cultivation talisman couldn't be considered a harmful item. It was just that the usage of this talisman was very strange. Its description was as follows. Rapid cultivation talisman. The user will seal off their 5 senses for 15 days, completely isolate themselves from the outside world, lose their 7 emotions and 6 desires, and block off all of their original memories. In the depths of their mind, only one thought would be generated, and that was, cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Continue cultivating. For 15 days, it will absorb all the power between heaven and earth to the greatest extent. Mystic energy absorbs mystic energy, spiritual energy absorbs spiritual energy, and even this rapid cultivation talisman was really strange. In the past, when she studied talismans and talismans, she had never seen such a detailed explanation. This rapid cultivation talisman, just the explanation alone was written on an entire page. At the end, there were even words of encouragement. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and use the rapid cultivation talisman. You will truly feel the rapid increase in your cultivation and spiritual senses. Join us. Cultivator, success is waiting for you ahead. Arbor, what kind of weird charm was this? To block all 5 senses for 15 days, a person would lose sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch at the same time. Then what was the meaning of life? This must be the feeling of chewing wax when eating chicken thighs. Oh, that's right, I still have to block his memory. No, 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 no. How is this a quick cultivation talisman? It was simply a death talisman. However, looking at the description of this talisman, it was quite good at causing trouble. It was very hot and could raise one's mood in an instant. However, she only drew it and held it in her hands to take a look. He thought to himself that after he left this mystic realm, he should find a little mystic cultivator he didn't know to conduct an experiment first. Let's see how much that person can grow in 15 days. There shouldn't be any trouble. Looking at the description, it didn't seem like a bad talisman. It was just that the conditions for rapid cultivation were a little tricky. The little guy grabbed the quick cultivation talisman and muttered to himself for a while. When he raised his head, he was shocked by the big furry face in front of his defensive barrier. Fuck, what the hell was this giant ape doing? It was so close to his defensive barrier. At first glance, she was really frightened by its big face. The giant ape suddenly grinned at her and even squinted its little black eyes at her. Chapter 1095. Suddenly, that hairy hand smoothly passed through her defensive barrier and directly grabbed the rapid cultivation talisman in her hand. Arbor suddenly felt her heart protrude, and her eyelids twitched heavily. What the hell? It mustn't be what she was thinking. The giant ape abruptly threw the rapid cultivation talisman at Arbor and quickly shook it off. It then grinned at Arbor with a simple and honest expression. You. Before the word cheat could come out of her mouth, Arbor knew that the situation was far from good. This rapid cultivation talisman. Oh, no, this disaster-courting talisman was about to take effect. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that she was still inside the secret realm and couldn't jump out no matter how much she cultivated. However, what she didn't know was that when the rapid cultivation talisman activated and she entered a frenzied cultivation mode, she subconsciously started to refine the secret realm. At this time, She mobilized all the mystic energy in the secret realm and gathered it around her in an unending stream. But this time, she was completely unaware of it. Little Sixth Sheng, Sikong Fuling, and the others, who were still inside the frigid pond, abruptly opened their eyes and looked up incredulously at the surface of the water. They saw that the depths of the frigid pond had been completely enveloped by the dense mystic energy rushing down from above. The mystic energy was so dense that it was visible to the naked eye. Clumps and clumps of mystic energy sank into the water and vigorously rushed toward the nooks and crannies of the frigid pond. The giant ape kicked its legs with joy and roared a few times to express its joy. At this time, Arbor was already completely immersed in a frenzied state of cultivation. She didn't know that the entire frigid pond was being stirred up by her, and the frigid pond water was rushing straight up. Exclamation point. Under the pressure of the powerful mystic energy, Bailey Wu, Xiaomi, and Akito's young lady, Akir, were the first to be unable to resist. They even spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled out of the frigid pond. Immediately after, the three of them were caught by the secret realm and instantly thrown out. Wei Nanshu, Jin Hongwan, and Ollie were also thrown out of the secret realm. When they appeared in the Mystic Beast Forest, they immediately vomited a few mouthfuls of blood with bitter expressions. She only felt that her heart and lungs were being squeezed by that terrifying, profound energy, making it extremely unbearable. In the entire mystic realm, apart from Arbor, only Sikong Fuling, Qin Susu, Duan Siren, Little Six Sheng, and Bailey Zhen remained. These 5 people withstood the enormous pressure and tried their best to take a share of the thick, profound energy. However, the truth was just that frustrating. They clearly saw such a dense, profound energy hanging above their heads, but they couldn't even enjoy a trace of it. This was like a person who had walked into a gourmet shop. There were hundreds of different types of delicacies in front of him, but his stomach was not good. He couldn't even swallow the plain porridge and side dishes. That was how sad it was. Under their helplessness, the 5 of them successively jumped out of the wintry pool, and then they glanced at each other, and all of them were extremely helpless and speechless. A moment later, the 5 of them were also teleported out of the secret realm. Before parting, Duan Siren sighed and said, "I didn't expect that after entering the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm this time, I didn't even obtain a Xuanji pill as a reward. What a failure." When the others heard this, they couldn't help but smile wryly. It went without saying that their hearts were filled with disappointment. At this time, Arbor was like a whale sucking in water, continuously absorbing the dense, profound energy in this place. It wasn't until a day and night later that it completely absorbed all the profound energy in the entire area. Rumble. The mystic realm then collapsed. Chapter 1096. Arbor's plain-colored figure appeared under an old, crooked tree. She was holding a round, transparent mystic beast forest heart that she had refined. Following her instincts, she put this mystic beast forest heart into her inner world. Arbor raised her head slightly. Her black eyes were as still as water as she gazed ahead. There was a deathly stillness in front of her. If she could feel anything now, she would probably beat the ground with her small fists and yell at her miscalculation. She had thought that after the damned giant ape stuck a disaster-courting talisman on her, she would be able to cultivate in the mystic realm for 15 days before coming out. At that time, she would have recovered her senses and memories anyway, so it wouldn't matter much. But the truth was, the second day after the disaster-courting talisman attached to her body, she had refined the mystic realm and tricked herself into being transported out. There were 14 days left until the disaster-courting talisman's removal. During these 14 days, she would be a blind, deaf, and mute person, a jade carving without a trace of emotions or desires. The little fellow's pitch-black eyes appeared especially translucent under the night sky, and her pupils shone faintly. At first glance, anyone would be able to tell that this was a little blind person. Oh, no, it was a little piece of wood that had lost her senses. Xiao Mu strolled aimlessly in the forest, not knowing exactly where she wanted to go. She only knew that she was still sensing the mystic energy in the mystic beast forest as she moved. Now, there was only one thought in her mind. Cultivate. 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 She wanted to find a place with the densest mystic energy in this mystic beast forest and continue cultivating. Now, no one could stop her from crazily cultivating. Work hard to increase her cultivation. Work hard to increase her spiritual senses. In Xiao Mu's heart, a slogan resounded loudly and clearly. She would kill anyone who dared to hinder her cultivation. Absolutely not show mercy. This kind of rapid cultivation talisman was abnormal in that it really did what the prompt said. It completely blocked one's five senses and sealed one's past memories. It really made one's entire being, from the body to the heart, honestly shout out one goal: cultivation. If Arbor knew that she had been tricked out of the mystic realm and was walking aimlessly in the mystic beast forest, she might have given the giant ape senior a good beating. At this time, many adventurer teams had gathered in the periphery of the mystic beast forest after hearing the news. Of course, they were here for the rarely seen Bloodfire Phoenix egg. How formidable was Simon Manor's high priest? He had divined that the Bloodfire Phoenix egg would descend into the mystic beast forest in the next few days, so his words were definitely not false. Everyone came with the same goal, but there was only one phoenix egg.
It was hard to say who would get it.
The entire mystic beast forest was turbulent and unpredictable. The experts of the 5 prefectures had gathered, and the people of the Heavenly Tao sect, Daybreak sect, and the 5 factions were all rushing towards the mystic beast forest. When they received the news, they had already rushed over. However, it took them some time to get there. By the time the Heavenly Tao sect's sect master, Sitamin, arrived with a group of Heavenly Tao sect disciples, the mystic beast forest was already bustling with noise and excitement. Brother Situ, Daybreak sect master, Liang Wanshan, led a group of disciples and cupped their hands at him. You've also come after hearing about the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, right? That's right, Brother Liang. Simon Manor's high priest doesn't easily make a sound, but once he does, it truly alarms the entire Seekong planet. Ha ha ha. Situmin also laughed. I heard that even the people from the 4 great manors appeared together this time. It can be seen how attractive this Bloodfire Phoenix egg is. Chapter 1097. Liang Qingqing couldn't help but ask, Father, do you think there's a problem with this phoenix egg? Why would Simon Manor's high priest make such an important piece of news public? Can't their Simon Manor secretly come and take the phoenix egg away? Qingqing's words are reasonable. Liang Wanshan smiled. Father is also thinking this way. In any case, we don't care. We're just here to join in the fun. If we can't obtain the phoenix egg, everything will depend on fate. Situmin also let out a long laugh. Sect Master Liang is extremely right. Then let's go. The group chatted for a bit before following behind their sect master into the mystic beast forest in a hubbub. Not long after the 2 teams left, the Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming, appeared at the entrance of the forest with the Mu family's young disciples, Mu Zijuan, Mu Jilan, and the others. After the order was given, the Mu clan also set out for the mystic beast forest in unison, each of their youthful faces carrying traces of anticipation. If they could obtain the ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg, they would definitely be able to raise their strength by a large margin. Whether or not they could form a contract with it was another matter. At the very least, there was hope for now. The crowd was surging with emotions as the cultivators used their own abilities and rapidly rushed over. At this time, Arbor had already found a place with the densest mystic energy in the center of the mystic beast forest and started cultivating. Soon, the mystic energy in the entire mystic beast forest was mobilized by her again and gathered above her head. After using the rapid cultivation talisman and absorbing all the mystic energy in the mystic beast forest secret realm, her cultivation had already skipped the gradual attainment realm from level 13 mystic cultivator realm to the initial success realm. At this moment, she felt that she was about to break through the barrier of phenomenal success. With this kind of abnormal cultivation speed, breaking through from the initial success stage to the phenomenal success stage in less than a day and night, it would truly scare a large number of people to death. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. These words kept floating in darling Xiao's heart. She immersed herself in cultivation again, without blinking. Although her 5 senses were completely blocked, her spiritual awareness grew abnormally ferociously. Originally, his spiritual sense was only at the 1st level, but in the past few days, it had crazily grown by 2 levels. Now, it had reached the 3rd level of spiritual sense. This was a rather outrageous matter. It should be known that an ordinary person's Xian sense was only about 60% of their cultivation. This was already considered not bad. In other words, a level 13 great mystic cultivator's mystic conscious could be considered perfect if it reached level 7 at most. As for Arbor, although his cultivation had yet to break through to the spirit realm, his conscious had already broken through to the spirit realm, and his spiritual sense had already broken through to the 3rd level. Such a heaven-defying act was truly unique in the world. The growth of one's profound sense was much more difficult than one's own cultivation. This was something that everyone knew. What could it be that his profound sense could increase by 1 level in 1 or 2 days? That was absolutely impossible. Arbor cultivated diligently in the midst of this impossibility, wholeheartedly cultivating to the end. Inside the mystic beast forest, huge waves had long since surged to the heavens. Moreover, the people from the 8 great patrician families had all come after hearing the news and were planning to try their luck in the mystic beast forest. In any case, regardless of whether or not he could get the phoenix egg, it was just an activity. In other words, the important thing was to participate. The Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming, and the Dou family's patriarch, Dou Heping, met in the forest and exchanged a few pleasantries with fake smiles. Chapter 1098. Just as they were about to part ways, they suddenly saw masses of surging mystic energy in the sky above the mystic beast forest swiftly heading in a certain direction. The 2 family heads were so excited that their faces trembled. A phoenix egg! A phoenix egg has come into being! Yang Fengyan excitedly grabbed eldest young Sir Qin's arm while wearing a half-veil. Eldest young Sir Qin dodged to the side, evading her claws, and glanced at her with a spurious smile. Shout after you see clearly. If an ancient bloodfire phoenix egg comes into being, it should be accompanied by golden red light, and the flames should burn most of the sky. How is this some phoenix egg coming into being? It seemed like someone was cultivating in the forest and sucking in all the mystic energy in the world. TSK, but this was also quite extravagant. With so much mystic energy surging over, was this person trying to reach the peak of level 15 mystic cultivator cultivation? When Yang Fengyan saw her cousin evade her hand imperceptibly, she couldn't help but pout in annoyance. Eldest cousin, the high priest didn't clearly say when the phoenix egg would appear. Could it be that the phoenix egg still hasn't come into being after we stay in this forest for 10 days to half a month? That's hard to say. A woman with beautiful features and a plump figure leaned against eldest young Sir Qin and imperceptibly swept a glance at Yang Fengyan before sneering lightly. Yang Fengyan's face darkened, and she was about to berate when she heard family head Qin whisper, "Let's go. Let's go over there and take a look." The direction he was pointing at was precisely where the mystic energy was surging. Arbor didn't know that a large group of people was rushing to her location. Although her 5 senses and memories were temporarily blocked, she still had her instincts. Before she entered closed-door cultivation to absorb mystic energy, she had already set up several talisman matrices nearby. Right now, she was at the critical juncture of breaking through to phenomenal success as a level 13 mystic cultivator, so she naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to the outside world. As for Dou Heping, Mu Boming, and Qin Guilu's group, it was impossible for them to immediately discern the direction and rush to Arbor's location in a short time. After all, the entire mystic beast forest was enormous. Even though they were looking at a mountain, they were still a long way from Qiaomu. Ding dang ding dang. The clear and melodious footbell rang nearby. A slender figure appeared at the periphery of the array and curiously sized up the situation. He clearly felt that the wind and clouds were surging in this place, and the profound energy was rather dense, so why didn't he see a single person? Sikong Fuling, the saintess of the demonic cult, looked up curiously at the sky. Above the head of the pitch-black trees that intersected with each other, waves of profound energy were like an upside-down whirlpool, pouring down towards a single point. Impressive. Sikong Fuling's eyes moved slightly. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Princess, it's her." Sikong Fuling. Sikong Fuling turned her head to look with a mocking smile hanging from the corner of her mouth. A princess of 1,000 gold? You can't run into this forest where thousands of beasts are hibernating to court death. Before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt a tyrannical wave of profound energy coming straight at his chest. That damned guy. He actually attacked her without saying a word. While Sikong Fuling was speechless, her entire body dodged to the left, evading this swift and fierce palm strike. When she turned around to take a look, she saw that the person's palm strike had instantly blasted half of an ancient tree next to her. With a crack, the entire tree toppled over and smashed fiercely in her direction. A severe glint flashed across Sikong Fuling's eyes, and with a furious shout, she swiftly sent a punch flying over. Chapter 1099. Borrowing the force of her punch, Sikong Fuling swiftly leaped into the air, grabbed the ancient tree branch above her, and flipped to the top of the tree. Her charming eyes gazed frostily at the two women who were slowly walking out of the pitch-black forest. The woman in the lead was exceptionally bewitching. Purple shadows were drawn out around her eyes using a special flower juice, embellishing her beautiful little face even more incomparably gorgeous. Her long purple strapless dress trailed on the ground, perfectly outlining her lithe figure. She was a stunner, but unfortunately, her brain wasn't good, and she attacked indiscriminately. Sikong Fuling glanced coldly at the newcomer. "Who are you?" She didn't look like a princess from any country. How could there be a princess dressed so bewitchingly, like a prostitute from a brothel? Audacious. You actually dare to be so rude in front of our Raksha princess? Hurry and kneel down and kowtow to our princess to apologize. Startled, Sikong Fuling turned to look at the Raksha princess in disbelief. You're the Raksha ghost sex Raksha princess? The Raksha princess gave her a bewitching smile, but there was no smile in her eyes. Apart from me, have you seen a princess more bewitching and beautiful than me? The Raksha princess' narcissism was unmistakable the moment she opened her mouth. Although Sikong Fuling also felt that she was very beautiful, she absolutely wouldn't be so shameless as to praise herself in front of a stranger. Thus, she chuckled, her laughter filled with mockery and contempt. The female disciple behind the Raksha princess bristled and jumped up. "Princess, she's mocking you." The Raksha princess's lips twitched with a fake smile, and she instantly shot towards Sikong Fuling. "No need for you to remind me. This princess has eyes and naturally can see it." Sikong Fuling, today is the day of your death. Enraged, Sikong Fuling attacked the Raksha princess's chest with a palm.
"You old witch.
My demonic cult has no enmity with your Raksha ghost sect. Why are you suddenly attacking me? Humph. Little slut, you must be eliminated today. Don't say anything else." The Raksha princess blinked her beautiful eyes and directly reached out to grab Sikong Fuling's head. Sikong Fuling countered with a backhand strike and clashed with the Raksha princess's right claw. Following which, she staggered back several steps and forcefully suppressed the mouthful of blood that was about to flow out of her mouth. Damn it, what kind of cultivation does this Luosha princess have? She seems to be stronger than me. Haha, a mere level 12 mystic cultivator dares to strut around in front of this princess. The Raksha princess's cold and beautiful eyes stared at Sikong Fuling like a venomous snake. She clasped her hands together and raised a ball of dense, profound energy light. "Today, I'll let you have a taste of what it means to be inviolable." Ha 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 ha. After saying that, she laughed heartily. Thinking that she could get rid of this little demoness today and win back her brother's sect master's heart in a few days, the Raksha princess was in a very good mood. Sikong Fuling really fell for it even while lying down. How could she have known that the ghost princess was looking for trouble with her because she was reluctant to leave her sect master? She mistakenly thought that the sect master was unwilling to accept her, the Raksha princess's, good intentions because he was hiding the saint of the demonic cult in his heart. If she knew the truth, she would definitely tell this Raksha princess. Big sister, I'm begging you, you really found the wrong person. I've interacted with the sect master for so many years, but there's only sibling affection and no romantic love between us. Chapter 1100. Besides, hadn't her cult master taken a fancy to that black-hearted and merciless wretched doll? If she hadn't been injured by that stinky fellow previously, how could she not even have the strength to escape from the Raksha princess now? Sikong Fuling had indeed come to the Mystic Beast Forest to see Arbor. Because that day, her elder brother had rolled back to the demonic sect headquarters in a sorry state, and his chest had even been heavily injured, which infuriated her greatly. She had to come and see who exactly was so vicious to deal such a heavy blow to her cult master. Her original plan was to get close to this little brat and pretend to be on good terms with her. Then, she would take advantage of the latter's unpreparedness to stab her and avenge her elder brother. However, this stinky child didn't like her at all from the very beginning. To think that she had purposely shown goodwill and helped that stinky lass when she first appeared at the small base. She didn't expect that the stinky lass didn't appreciate her kindness at all. It was truly a joyous occasion that came to naught. In the end, not to mention getting close to that wretched lass, she was nearly toyed to death by that crafty and eccentric girl. If the Raksha princess explained things clearly now, Sikong Fuling would definitely have to explain to her. How infuriating! Not only was she beaten up by Arbor, but she was also tricked. Now, she even had to take the blame for her. The Raksha princess didn't say anything and just beat Sikong Fuling to death. From the beginning until now, a smug smile hung on the Raksha princess's lips. Sikong Fuling, you, the holy lady, must die in this mystic beast forest today. The Raksha princess chased after Sikong Fuling and repeatedly struck her with mystic energy. You can't escape.
Fuck.
Sikong Fuling really wanted to curse. This neurotic Raksha ghost sect master seemed to have gone mad and was bent on killing her. Why was this so? Raksha princess, don't bully me. Sikong Fuling turned around and exchanged a palm with the Raksha princess. She crashed to the left and spat out a mouthful of blood, which also activated the nearby talisman array. The Raksha princess looked in astonishment at the 60 talismans that suddenly appeared around her. It was a binding talisman array. The Rakshasa princess was trapped within. No matter how hard she tried, she was still trapped in the rune array. The binding glyph array composed of 60 blue glyphs could bind anyone below Arbor. However, Princess Luasha's current cultivation was above Arbor's, so the binding rune array could only trap her temporarily. She would definitely break free after a while. Sikong Fuling cut a sorry figure. Originally, her clothes were very thin and translucent, revealing 2 tender white thighs. At this moment, he had been hooked by tree branches in the forest and chased all the way here by Princess Raksha like a dog. His clothes were already tattered beyond recognition, and he was almost naked. She hurriedly took out a red robe from her inner world and draped it over her body before looking up at the Raksha princess. Sikong Fuling's eyes flashed as a flute landed in her hand. Placing it to her lips, she immediately started to play the flute. When playing this dark phoenix demonic flute, one must use profound energy in order to bring out the best effect. It was a pity that her profound energy had been severely damaged twice in a row, and she was already an arrow at the end of its flight. When she played it, the effect was greatly reduced. Even so, Sikong Fuling still persevered. After all, she could tell that this binding talisman array could only trap Princess Luosha for a while and not for long. Once she broke free, it would be the time of her death. Chapter 1101. Right now, only by sending the Raksha princess into the nightmare realm could she obtain a chance of survival. Princess. The female disciple behind the Raksha princess cried out in alarm and abruptly drew her sword. With a tense expression, she slashed at Sikong Fuling, who was holding the phoenix nether demonic flute and playing the demonic notes while vigilantly watching her. Sikong Fuling had already exhausted too much mystic energy and was merely forcefully holding on at the moment. A wisp of blood had already trickled down the corner of her lips. Seeing that she had no strength to resist this slash at all, Sikong Fuling couldn't help but sigh in disappointment and frustration. She didn't expect that this trip to the Mystic Beast Forest would actually be her suicide mission. Suddenly, a small, fair and tender hand with slender jade-like fingers and a white wrist that was as transparent as moonlight drilled out from the side of her face. A claw directly latched onto the neck of the Raksha ghost sect female disciple who was thrusting her sword over. The slender hand exerted a bit of force. Crack. That Raksha ghost sect disciple's eyes bulged in disbelief. Her first thought before death was, how is this possible? That was clearly a girl's hand, yet it was actually as firm as jade and directly twisted the neck of a level 10 mystic cultivator. Broken. Broken. Sikong Fuling's mouth was agape, and her neck stiffly moved. She turned around and looked in astonishment at the little lady standing behind her. Wearing plain clothes and a cold and emotionless expression, she stood in the pitch-black thicket like a jade statue flickering with a jade-colored glow.
Bam.
The Raksha princess, who had finally broken the entire talisman array after flinging out waves of mystic energy, turned around just in time to see this scene. When she saw that expressionless little lady snap her subordinate's neck with one hand, even the Raksha princess, who was experienced and knowledgeable, couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This kind of fear and cowardice made the Raksha princess feel exceptionally unwell. When had she ever been afraid of anything? Yet today, she actually felt a layer of fear towards such a young stoic-faced little lady. It was simply exceptionally hilarious.
You.
Who are you? The Raksha princess stared at Arbor fiercely while cowardly at heart, and she couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Xiao Mu abruptly moved, directly flitting towards the Raksha princess and reaching out to strangle her neck. Boom! Princess Luosha took a step back and threw out a powerful dark force at Arbor's body. The defensive barrier was instantly activated. He blocked Princess Luosha's attack without hesitation. Spirit weapon. As Princess Raksha screamed in shock, Arbor's 10 fingers, which were as hard as jade, stabbed toward the back of Princess Raksha's head. At this instant, not to mention the Raksha princess, even Sikong Fuling, who was watching from the sidelines, nearly stopped breathing. Too strong. It had only been 2 days since he last saw this little girl. Why did her cultivation seem to have improved so much? Sikong Fuling simply could not believe her own eyes. The Luosha princess leaped forward and dodged her claw in a wretched manner. She turned around and didn't have time to speak. Xiao Mu stomped her foot on the ground, immediately creating a small pit. Her expression didn't change at all as she clawed forward with her small hand, ripping off half of the Raksha princess's tube top with a rip. Sikong Fuling.
Fuck.
If not for the fact that this little imp was a girl, she would have thought that this child was a pervert and sincere. The face of the Rakshasa ghost sex princess immediately turned green. She looked at the girl in front of her in disbelief. Suddenly, her brows twitched, and she nearly exclaimed, "Why, you're blind." Chapter 1102. Sikong Fuling looked over in shock and finally saw Arbor's current expression. Her eyes were like 2 pools of cold water. Although they were limpid, pitch black, and extremely watery, one could see that there was no focus in them at all. She really was blind. How was this possible? Sikong Fuling sat up straight in shock. She was clearly fine several days ago, so how did she become blind when they met today? Arbor pursed her thin lips, and her eyes did not fluctuate in the slightest. She instinctively spread out her spiritual senses to the left and reached out to grab the evil person who had broken her talisman array. She had said before that anyone who obstructed her cultivation would be sent to the netherworld and would not be tolerated. The Raksha princess was thoroughly enraged. A blind person also dared to be impudent in front of her. This girl really had to be properly taught a lesson. Come out, Misty Nightwolf. The Raksha princess bellowed. A large wolf the size of 2 calves with shining pitch-black fur suddenly appeared next to the Raksha princess. Seacombe Fulling swallowed her saliva and cried out to Arbor, Level 14 Mystic Beast, Misty Night Wolf. Be careful. The Misty Night Wolf bared its sharp teeth at Arbor and crawled on the ground. It suddenly howled and flew toward Arbor.
Bam.
Qing Wan, who had abruptly appeared in front of Arbor, kicked the Misty Night Wolf to the ground. It whimpered twice, and its eyes emitted a wild and untamed green light. Arbor's surging spiritual senses formed a swift and invisible mental attack that directly penetrated the other party's conscious and tore it apart.
Ah.
The Raksha princess, who did not expect such a move, was caught off guard. Her conscious felt like it had been ruthlessly torn apart and was on the verge of shattering from the root. This caused her to be flustered and short of breath, and her body also followed up with the most honest reaction and spat out a large mouthful of blood. This was mystic conscious?
No.
This was spiritual sense, right? How could a little mystic cultivator's conscious generate spiritual sense? The Rakshasa princess only felt that her head was in a daze and in pain. Before she could think about it, she already had the intention to retreat. She extended her hand to summon the fog night wolf back, turned around, and fled in a sorry state without looking back. Arbor looked at the Luosha princess coldly. Although she couldn't see, she could follow her with her psychic sense. Seeing that the man had indeed left the area as if he was fleeing, Arbor indifferently withdrew his spiritual sense and walked forward aimlessly. Seacombe Fulling dazedly looked at her and called out, Hey! Only to see her slowly walk away without even turning her head. Seacombe Fulling sighed softly as she watched her departing back view with a sour taste in her heart. This little fellow had unintentionally saved her life, and she wasn't someone who couldn't tell good from bad. After this incident, Seacombe Fulling felt some gratitude toward the little fellow in her heart. My Lotus's section break. Greetings, princess. 2 royal maids dressed in pink and green bowed in unison toward a woman who was slowly walking over with a smile while carrying a small floral food box. That girl looked to be 17 years old and had a delicate and beautiful rosy complexion on her fair oval face. Her combed black hair was coiled into a unique swan bun with a hairpin, and 2 purple-red pearl hairpins were inserted into the bun. Her exposed white wrists were also wearing a pair of priceless gold-threaded jasper bracelets. Seeing the 2 royal maids bow to her, that woman nodded slightly and said with excellent etiquette, You 2 need not be so courteous. Chapter 1103. Thank you, Commandery Princess, the 2 junior royal maids said as they straightened up. Is His Highness inside the study? Commandery Princess and smiled faintly with an indescribable gentleness. The 2 royal maids exchanged glances before one of them mustered up her courage and replied, Yes. Can you send someone to pass on the message that and requests to see His Highness? Yes. The other royal maid hastily turned around and ran towards the junior eunuch's duty room. Commandery Princess and stood outside the Eastern Palace's courtyard wall and waited quietly, not revealing the slightest bit of impatience or irritation. After a short while, the eunuch Xiao 11Z strode over and bowed to Commandery Princess Commandery Princess, His Highness has some important matters to attend to, so he cannot find the time to meet you for the time being. Please return. And nodded gently as she handed the small food box in her hand to Xiao 11Z. I'll have to trouble eunuch Xiao 11Z to hand this food box to His Highness. This is a pastry that and made for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Her Majesty the Queen Dowager liked it very much after eating it, so she instructed and to give some to His Highness. Ah yes. Thank you, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Thank you, Commandery Princess. Xiao 11Z quickly and respectfully accepted it with both hands before saying to Commandery Princess Ian with a smile, Take care, Commandery Princess. Commandery Princess and nodded with a smile before turning to board a small sedan and returning the way she came. Xiao 11Z peered at that small sedan before letting out a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, Fortunately, she didn't pester me. At least she's tactful. Eunuch Xiao 11Z, why is His Highness not seeing the commandery princess? A royal maid in green couldn't resist asking softly in bewilderment. The commandery princess also had a lot of face in front of Her Majesty, the Queen Dowager. Logically speaking, even if it was out of consideration for Her Majesty, the Queen Dowager, His Highness should not be so cold to the commandery princess. Shoo, 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 what do you know? Xiao 11Z grumpily waved his hand at those two royal maids. His Highness is busy, so how could he have the time to see this person today and see that tomorrow? All right, hurry up and do your work. We don't need servants who talk too much in the Eastern Palace. Just remember what your master says and do it. There's no need for so many whys. After being rebuked by Xiao 11Z, the royal maid instantly shut her mouth in embarrassment. She curtsied and muttered, "Yes." The sedan passed through a small garden outside the Eastern Palace and took a detour to the Empress Dowager's bedroom.
Princess.
Walking beside the sedan, a young girl with a long face couldn't help but pout and say, "His Highness is too unreasonable." The princess was ordered by the Empress Dowager to deliver the pastries, but the crown prince didn't even see you. Shut up. Commandery Princess Anne's frigid voice traveled out from behind the curtain. Is His Highness's affairs something a little wicked servant like you can casually fabricate? If you continue to talk nonsense like this and don't know your limits, I'll send you out of the palace tomorrow and send you back to the Marquis of Anne's residence.
Ah.
That young maidservant gaped in horror and rolled on the ground in fright. She repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. "Miss, please don't send me back." Yes, it was this servant who spoke out of turn. It was this servant's fault. "Miss, this servant won't dare to do it again in the future." Commandery Princess Anne calmly ordered, "Stop." Afterwards, she lifted the curtain by an inch and bent down to get out of the sedan. She then walked up to the young maidservant gracefully. Looking at her fearful appearance, Commandery Princess Anne sighed softly and bent down to help the young maidservant up. Chapter 1104. Do you know what you did wrong? Commandery Princess Anne asked her gently as she patted away the dust on her skirt. The little girl cowered a bit, her face still ghastly pale. This servant misspoke. Commandery Princess Anne said dryly, You are my personal maidservant. Your every word and action, when you go out, represents this princess. You must remember not to speak carelessly in the future." The little girl sniffled as she wiped her tears with her sleeve and nodded vigorously. "Yes, we'll remember." Commandery Princess and then smiled and pulled her back to the sedan chair. "It's getting late, so we have to hurry back." Ever since Anne's parents passed away, she had been staying by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's side, and her residence was inside the Queen Dowager's longevity palace. All these years, the Queen Dowager doted on her as if she was her biological granddaughter. Anne's status had also risen from the original orphan girl to the point where everyone fawned over her. In order to maintain her current status, she had to speak and act cautiously and abide by the rules. Although Her Majesty the Queen Dowager treated her as her biological granddaughter, she was not really her biological granddaughter after all. But if she could fight for another identity, then it would be a different story. She would no longer have to worry about difficulties in the palace in the future. Back then, she had brought into the palace from the Marquis of Anne's estate, so she could be considered her #1 confidant. It was precisely because of this that she had to give her a warning from time to time to prevent her from foolishly inviting trouble for herself. "Commandery Princess, we have arrived." Sue reminded her softly. It was only then that Commandery Princess and returned to her senses. She looked at Anya Pavilion that she was staying in and stepped out of the sedan chair. After looking up for a while, she strode towards the Queen Dowager's bedchamber. "Let's go to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place to take a look first." Commandery Princess. At this time, another yellow-clothed young lady came out of Anya Pavilion and bowed to Commandery Princess Keen. "The Madam of the Marquis of Anne's estate has sent an invitation to request an audience." Commandery Princess and creased her brows. What did she come here for? She did not have a good relationship with this aunt. Ever since her parents passed away, if Her Majesty the Queen Dowager had not taken her in, who knew how she would have been tormented by this aunt. As a result, her feelings towards the Marquis of Sue and's residence also faded with each passing day. Commandery Princess, you should meet the Marquis to avoid gossip. The palace maid dressed in yellow was able to distinguish right from wrong and spoke up to remind her. Commandery Princess and nodded faintly. Bring her over. After a short while, the Marquis of Sue and estate's Marquis Madam shuffled over with small steps, followed by a young woman with a plump figure. When the Marchioness saw Commandery Princess and she threw herself at her while bawling, "Little Ninth, you have to uphold justice for your fifth brother." Ninth sister. The young married woman behind her also started to cry. Commandery Princess and's had swelled from their crying, and her expression involuntarily turned cold. What happened? Marchioness, fifth young mistress, speak properly. The Marchioness of the Marquis of Sue and's estate sobbed as she clutched her handkerchief. After being helped up by old fifth's wife, she said to Commandery Princess "Little Ninth, your fifth brother, he died so tragically." What happened to fifth young master? Commandery Princess and asked indifferently. Your fifth brother was killed by someone. He died in the secret room of his own room. The doctor said he was starved to death. Chapter 1105. The Marchioness of the Marquis of Sue and's estate cried and shouted while patting her chest. "And you must seek justice for your fifth brother. Your fifth brother can't have died in vain like this." On the side, the fifth young madam pretended to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes, but she was sneering inwardly. This old woman simply didn't know what she was talking about. Did she really think that Commandery Princess would seek justice for her? Did she forget what she had done to the Commandery Princess back then? Yet she still dared to plead with someone else now. If it weren't for this old woman insisting on dragging her into the palace, she would have long left the Marquis of Sue and's estate, that impoverished household, and fled far away with her little sweetheart.
Who Yukong, that wretched man. So, what if he died?
Why did he have to die so shamelessly? When he was found naked in the secret chamber with a servant girl who did rough work in the court. It really made her lose face. She couldn't shed a single tear for this bastard. The fifth young madam sneered. Yet she pretended to be sobbing on the surface as she followed behind the granny and put in her best performance. After Commandery Princess and understood the situation, she told the madam of the Marquis of Sue and's estate calmly and distantly, "The Marquis truly flatters me too much. Since such a major incident has occurred, the Supreme Judiciary will certainly send people to investigate properly. And is only an unmarried woman, so how could she have the ability to interfere with the Supreme Judiciary's investigation? Madam, please restrain your grief and wait for the news at home." The madam of the Marquis of Sue and's estate glared at Commandery Princess
Great.
Ever since you became a Commandery Princess, you completely disregarded the Marquis of Sue and's estate, right? The old woman rebuked loudly. Don't forget, you are a young lady from the Marquis of Sue and's estate, and you are called Hushuain. Don't even know your ancestor's surname. And clenched her fists in anger. Madam, please mind your words and actions. I am your aunt, your elder. What's wrong with me lecturing you? The old woman rebuked indignantly, and she snorted eccentrically with a crooked mouth. If you can't uncover the true culprit in your fifth brother's matter, I won't be done with you. Oh, who do you want to be done with? A cold rebuke came from behind them. Commandery Princess and looked up with reddened eyes and hastily curtsied. And greets the Queen Dowager. The fifth young mistress shuddered and cursed the old lady in her heart. This damned old woman dared to be so arrogant in the palace, making a big fuss. Now, she had attracted the attention of the Empress Dowager. Let's see how the Empress Dowager will get out of the situation.
Don't implicate me.
The Marchioness of Sue was also shocked. She quickly turned around and put on a fawning old face, bowing and greeting. This subject's wife greets the Empress Dowager. The Queen Dowager didn't even look at that old and young pair as she walked past them to E and sighed. She patted her small hand with a smile and asked, we heard that you went to the Eastern Palace. What is that grandson of mine doing? Commandery Princess and explained with a smile, His Highness is busy with official business, so and left after handing the pastries to Eunuch Xiao 11Z. The Queen Dowager was taken aback. She glanced at Commandery Princess and before remarking with a shake of her head, That's true. This grandson of mine is good in every way. It's just that once he gets involved in official business, he forgets about sleep and food, forgetting everything else. And does not dare to disturb you. Oh, we know that you are the most sensible one. The Queen Dowager patted En's small hand with a smile. Let's go. Accompany we to the royal garden for stroll. I heard that there is a newly secluded pond in the rear court, and it is very elegant. Commandery Princess and agreed with a nod with a smile. Chapter 1106. A yellow curtain that reached the ground fluttered gently. 2 guards were standing at the entrance to the Eastern Palace's small study, looking straight ahead. Xiao 11Z walked over in small, quick steps. Inside the room, Prince Emo creased his brows as he looked at his slightly stiff fingers. He applied a layer of medicinal power to them, quickly dispelling this stiff feeling. He propped up his chin with one hand as he stared at his other hand that was loosening and clenching. He speculated that this should be some kind of neurotoxin, but if he couldn't find the source, he wouldn't be able to prescribe the right medicine. Your Highness. Xiao 11Z ran in hastily with a small embroidered food box in his hand. Emo Lian didn't even look up as she asked apathetically. She left.
Yes.
This servant informed Commandery Princess and in accordance with your Highness's instructions. She didn't pester us and left without another word. Emo Lian nodded. Just as she picked up her brush to write down a word, she gripped her right wrist tightly, a faint viciousness flashing past her eyes. Damn it, that stiff feeling had crept up on her arm again after she used medicinal power to heal it. If he found that guy Ding Ting Ding, he would definitely chop him into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. After using medicinal power to treat her arm again, Emo Lian looked up slightly and glared impatiently at Xiao 11Z, who was standing inside the room. Is there anything else? Yes, Commandery Princess and left behind some pastries. She said that she had received Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's instructions and specially gave them to your Highness to taste. Emo Lian glanced apathetically at the food box that Xiao 11Z was holding in his hand. He knitted his brows and said, Since it's a reward from the Queen Dowager, you can distribute it to the palace servants below. Pick out a pot of first-rate longevity flowers for us as a gift to grandmother. As you command. Xiao 11Z lowered his head and silently retreated with the food box. He mused, His Highness doesn't even want to touch Commandery Princess En's pastries. His attitude is already so clear, so why does this Commandery Princess En keep coming to the Eastern Palace? She really doesn't have any discernment. After Xiao 11Z left, Huifeng arrived in front of the Crown Prince in a flash. Your Highness, the Hidden Night Pavilion received news that the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm has been unsealed ahead of time. Everyone was teleported out, but the Crown Princess was nowhere to be seen. Prince Emo immediately lost his composure and jumped up from the stool. What did you say? Hadn't it only been 10 days or so? How could the Mystic Realm have been unsealed? Wasn't it supposed to be a month? Why didn't it count? Your Highness, we've already sent Lightning's group from the Mystic Beast Forest base into the forest to search for the Crown Princess. Huifeng said worriedly, right now the 2 sects, 5 factions, 8 great patrician families, for great manners, Ani Prefecture, Luotian Prefecture, and others have all run to the Mystic Beast Forest. I wonder if something will happen. Emo Lian couldn't sit still on the spot. His little fellow didn't have a good relationship with the 5 factions and 8 great patrician families. In addition, there was also Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture eyeing her covetously from the sidelines. How could he not be worried about her safety? This won't do. Make preparations immediately. I'm going to the Mystic Beast Forest to search for her. Prince Mo made a prompt decision. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to go find her. Find her. Find her. There was a voice that kept reverberating in his mind, as if something bad would happen if he couldn't find her. His heart thumped rapidly, and his expression was as cold as water. Immediately summon 3,000 hidden guards and head to the Mystic Beast Forest with me to search for the Crown Princess. Yes. Chapter 1107. Hui Feng knew that His Highness the Crown Prince must be burning with anxiety right now, so he jumped out of the window and hastily went to inform the hidden guards to come. Soon, the Great King, who was holding the beauty's wrist and accompanying her in painting in Zhao Yi's bedchamber, received the latest news. His Highness the Crown Prince had ordered 3,000 hidden guards to set off for the Mystic Beast Forest and tossed all the unfinished business to him. This son of a fraud. Truly, he had a wife but no father. Every time he encountered a matter concerning his wife, he could even abandon his father. Unfilial son. So infuriating. Lian's section break. At the entrance to Anya Pavilion. Su, who was overjoyed, hurriedly followed her young miss footsteps. When she passed by the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, who were half-squatting and sweating profusely, she even provocatively curled her lips and rolled her eyes at them. From beginning to end, the Queen Dowager did not allow the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law to get up. She did not even glance at them from the corner of her eye until she disappeared from Anya Pavilion with Commandery Princess Ian. The group of junior royal maids covered their mouths as they peeped at the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, as if they were watching a good show. Afterwards, they dispersed. It was not until a few minutes later that the Marchioness finally dared to stand up with her hands on her hips. She groaned and exchanged glances with her daughter-in-law, who still had lingering fears. The two supported each other and left with tearful faces while massaging their waists. Back then, the Queen Dowager had accompanied the former king to conquer the country. Women were not inferior to men, so she was naturally very forthright. As a result, she also looked down on the bashful Marchioness and her daughter-in-law. Child, how many times have I told you? Don't meet those unnecessary people if you don't want to. The Queen Dowager sighed softly as she turned to glance at Ian beside her. Commandery Princess Ian's eyes reddened as she said softly, and was thinking that since we are family after all, it would not be good to go overboard for the sake of face. Sayu, you're just too kind-hearted. The Queen Dowager shook her head before saying with a smile, you should find a chance to meet that little sister-in-law of yours and learn from her. With your personality, you won't be so soft and easily manipulated. Little sister-in-law? Commandery Princess Ian was startled. That's right. The little granddaughter-in-law that I've never met. The Empress Dowager said with a smile. For the past few days, Aijia has been asking Gong Chang and to come over and tell me stories, haraha. At the mention of the little crown princess, the Empress Dowager actually beamed with joy. You don't know, she's amazing. I really like her methods. You know what? The Great King's Consort was amazing. In the end, when he saw my granddaughter-in-law, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. Also, that old woman from the Shu family bullied her and she immediately retaliated. Even now, that old woman is still learning the rules at home. Ha ha ha. When the Empress Dowager talked about something happy, she actually looked up to the sky and laughed. The old nanny following behind her couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She hurriedly stepped forward and whispered to the Empress Dowager, Your Highness, you've already mentioned this 3 times today. Really? The Queen Dowager laughed heartily. Afterwards, she turned to say to Ian, who was smiling faintly, It's a pity that this little fellow hasn't returned from the Mystic Beast Forest yet. Otherwise, I really would have to meet her properly. Commandery Princess and didn't know what to say in response, so she could only smile faintly. You are 17 this year, right? The Count of Jian An's estate son is 2 years older than you. Chapter 1108. That's because he is extremely good-looking and his cultivation is also not bad at such a young age. This Empress Dowager is very optimistic about him. If you're willing, this Empress Dowager will make the decision and let you meet him. The Empress Dowager said with a smile, "If you don't like him, then this Empress Dowager will help you find someone else." Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess Anne's expression stiffened before turning into a bashful smile. Her hand holding Her Majesty the Queen Dowager also involuntarily paused, and she quickly said, "Anne only wishes to be able to accompany the Queen Dowager." Sigh. What nonsense are you saying? The Queen Dowager cast her a glance before harumphing. "I am just an old woman, so it's fine with Fenggu accompanying me. You are so young, so of course you have to find a good-in-law. What is there to be shy about? My youngest granddaughter-in-law hasn't even turned 15 this year, yet she has already been engaged to my grandson. That's why it is better to get married sooner rather than later. Otherwise, all the good ones will be taken away." Behind her, elderly Nanny Fenggu burst into laughter and couldn't resist teasing. "Your Majesty, young ladies are all shy. How do you want the Commandery Princess to answer your question?" Okay, then I will make the decision." The Queen Dowager nodded with a chuckle. "In 2 days, have the Countess of Jian come over for tea and have her bring that rascal into the palace. Let her and take a look." Fenggu agreed with a smile. Yes, Your Majesty. This old servant will remember this." Commandery Princess Anne's slender hand that was hanging by her side clenched slightly before letting go. She revealed a gentle and bashful smile that was just the right amount of gentleness. The group accompanied the Queen Dowager to stroll around the small garden for an hour before returning to the Longevity Palace. After Anne bid farewell and left, Fenggu handed a cup of tea to Her Majesty, the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager shook her head slightly as she watched Anne's departing figure. "Fenggu, what do you think this child is thinking?" Fenggu quickly said, "Your Majesty, the Queen Dowager has already done your best for Commandery Princess Anne. The Commandery Princess will definitely understand. This morning, we only mentioned casually that the Crown Prince should also like such good pastries. But to her, it would become following an imperial edict to deliver pastries to the Eastern Palace. If the Crown Prince wasn't smart enough, he might even develop a grudge against his grandmother." Fenggu nodded slightly. "Your Highness's eyes are as sharp as torches. What can be hidden from your Highness's eyes? It's not that I don't know. All these years, and had always wanted to approach the Crown Prince step by step. But if the Crown Prince was truly interested in her, would he need to wait until now? Her Highness is the wisest." Fenggu nodded as she took out a hot handkerchief and handed it to the Empress Dowager to wipe her hands. She casually said, "Then the son of the Count of Jian's family today was also deliberately probed by Your Highness?" "That's not it." The Queen Dowager shook her head and accepted the handkerchief to wipe her hands, saying, "I have watched Anne grow up. I also hope that she can find a good family and have a good husband in the future. The Count of Jian has a good family background. The Count of Jian and his wife are both good people. The most important thing is that there are no messy concubines at home. The Count of Jian has been guarding his wife for 30 years. That's great." The son of the Count of Jian, Pei Dao, was also young and promising. He never had bad habits. He is a youth that the Crown Prince values, so his future is naturally limitless. We truly want to betroth her to the son of the Count of Jian. The Queen Dowager sighed as she said, "But from the looks of it, there probably isn't much of a chance." Chapter 1109. And will definitely understand Your Majesty's painstaking efforts in the future. It's also my fault for not disciplining him strictly. The Great King's current state is mostly due to my spoiling. Back then. Sigh, let's not talk about it. What's done is done, and it can't be remedied. The Queen Dowager sighed with melancholy. Just like a normal mother, she had followed the former king to conquer the country and suffered enough, so she wanted to give her son the best things in the world. She had spoiled the Great King, Mole, since he was young, so he didn't amount to much. The Great King's situation had formidable parents and a fierce son, while he himself was unambitious and relied on his parents above and his son below. Thus, he got by just like this. It's just my grandson who has suffered, having such an unreliable father. He has been burdened with a lot of things since he was young. The Queen Dowager lamented. He finally found someone he likes and wants to spend the rest of his life with. No matter what, this widow cannot let anyone ruin it. Of course, Fenggu said with a nod. These past few days, this old servant has been hearing Gong Chang and talk about the crown princess. This old servant is also itching to meet the crown princess immediately. The Queen Dowager smiled again, her eyes narrowed into slits. I liked it the moment I heard it. This child will definitely hit it off well with me. Ian, this child, is good at everything. It's just that she is a bit too pretentious and not sincere enough. The Queen Dowager commented with a shake of her head. Ian actually didn't understand the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager was an honest elderly lady, and it wasn't without reason that she liked the Crown Prince and Little Twelfth. These two children were just normal grandchildren in front of her, and they would happily call her grandmother when they saw her. Other children would not be like this. If Ian wasn't so pretentious and let go of her temperament in front of the Queen Dowager, perhaps the Queen Dowager would like her a bit more. Her standards are so high, and the one she likes is the Crown Prince. She clearly knows that it is a dead end, yet she still insists on running headfirst into it when this widow lures her back. The Queen Dowager sighed. At this moment, a secret guard came to report that the Crown Prince had left the capital. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she laughed loudly. She pulled Aunt Feng aside and said, Look, look, look. My grandson has gone a chase after his wife. We've only been gone for less than 10 days. Look at how impatient this child is. Ha ha ha. Fenggu pursed her lips and giggled. My Joe's section break. At the same time, Arbor was strolling aimlessly in the Mystic Beast Forest. If he encountered any ignorant, profound beasts that pounced over, he would mercilessly kill them with a single strike and then instinctively dig out their crystal cores. The entire Mystic Beast Forest was like her home's imperial garden. She walked and stopped, and from time to time, she would use her spiritual perception to scan her surroundings. She was searching for a better place with dense mystic energy to cultivate. In front of them was a small stream, the sound of water flowing through the forest. Sikong Fuling, who was sitting on a rock by the stream and washing her prey, turned her head warily when she heard faint footsteps. He couldn't help but stare blankly. Arbor walked over expressionlessly. After surveying the surroundings with his spiritual perception, he stretched out his leg to walk forward. Hey, there's water up ahead. You'll get wet if you step in. Sikong Fuling quickly stood up and pulled him back. Arbor turned his head, his unfocused gaze landing on her face. Gulp. A loud rumbling sound came from his stomach. Sikong Fuling couldn't help but smile after being taken aback. She pulled him back a few steps. Wait here. Chapter 11:11. Moreover, although she was a demoness, she still had her bottom line. Out of sight, out of mind. Sikong Fuling simply turned and left the stream, heading to other parts of the forest through the night. Less than a second after she left, Arbor opened her eyes, and her tense aura slowly relaxed. If Sikong Fuling had made a move just now, Arbor would have killed her without hesitation. Because anyone who hindered her from cultivating must go to hell. In a moment, Sikong Fuling had slipped one round around the gates of hell. Arbor didn't care where Sikong Fuling went. She didn't even know this person, and closed her eyes. Sikong Fuling didn't know how long she had walked for, but she felt that it should have been the middle of the night. Day and night couldn't be seen in this gloomy Mystic Beast Forest, but according to her estimation, it should be dawn now. Sikong Fuling halted her steps and turned back to take a look. She didn't know what was wrong with that fellow, but she was blind and somewhat dazed. Wasn't it too much for her to leave just like that? After all, she had saved her life before, and all the previous small conflicts could be disregarded. What if that fellow starved herself to death just like that? Then wouldn't she have indirectly killed her benefactor? Sikong Fuling also didn't understand her current state of mind. After being conflicted for a while, she couldn't resist turning around and sprinting toward the stream. However, when she ran back to the stream, she discovered that the little fellow had long disappeared without a trace. And right at this moment, a fiery cloud soared into the sky, boiling over half of the sky. A layer of golden-red light descended to the earth along with this fiery cloud, forming a spectacular golden pillar that connected the sky and earth together. Stunned, Sikong Fuling opened her mouth wide and looked up at the horizon. What the fuck was that? The phoenix egg has descended. A bloodfire phoenix egg. Father, the bloodfire phoenix egg really has descended, Liang Qingqing exclaimed with a slightly agitated expression. Sect Master Liang smiled and nodded. Everyone, be careful. This bloodfire phoenix egg can't possibly have popped out from a crack in a rock. If the phoenix couple is also present, don't do anything and just watch the show. That's right. The sect master of the Heavenly Path sect, Sitamin, nodded. He turned around and said a few words to the excited disciples. The most unlucky ones were Mu Boming, Do Heping, and Qin Guilu. They were originally flying towards Arbor's cultivation ground, but halfway through, they realized that the halo had completely disappeared. At that time, Arbor had already exited his cultivation state and was fighting with the Rakshasa Ghost sect leader, Princess Rakshasa. Mu Boming and the others lost the location of Arbor's cultivation, so they could only search the vicinity in a daze. However, Arbor continued to wander in the forest. How could they find her? Mu Boming and the others couldn't help but vomit blood when they saw the place where the bloodfire phoenix egg had lit up. It was actually a place that was very far away from them in a straight line. This time, they really had to speed up and run wildly. Along the way, there were disciples who couldn't keep up with their speed and fell behind, but Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others couldn't care less. They just kept urging themselves to go faster, faster, and even faster in their hearts. Their phoenix egg, they didn't want others to beat them to it. Back to Arbor. Not long after Sikong Fuling left, she also exited her cultivation state. Chapter 11-12. She disliked that the mystic energy next to the stream wasn't dense enough and wanted to move to another place to search. Just as she was casually strolling around, she sensed that more than half of the mystic beast forest was suddenly covered by a surge of restless and dense fire spiritual energy. Hurl. Something fell from the sky and smashed toward her head. In the blink of an eye, Arbor turned around and swiftly stepped away, avoiding the whistling sound of the wind. Boom. That thing smashed into the thick pile of withered grass in the forest. Xiao Mu used her spiritual conscience to look over and saw that it was a strange oval-shaped object that was sitting on the pile of withered grass just like that. Its entire body was overflowing with a red light, and it looked quite big and heavy. She didn't know what the hell it was, but when it fell from the sky just now, it almost smashed through her head. Arbor turned around and was about to stroll around again when she heard a rumbling sound. When she turned around to look, that oval-shaped thing had actually rolled to her little feet. Xiao Mu didn't hesitate at all and directly kicked it flying. Qing Wan, who had silently appeared, couldn't help but cover her eyes with her wings. Didn't I already say not to act cute in front of Master? Master isn't a normal girl at all, okay? She never liked cute things. Master. Qing Wan felt that she needed to remind her foolish master. Pitiful little master, she was actually tricked into this state by the giant ape. A heaven-defying, unparalleled bloodfire phoenix egg fell from the sky and rolled to her feet, but she actually didn't want it. Arbor actually didn't hear Qing Wan's voice. She only felt that something had appeared beside her, so she blankly turned her head and looked at Qing Wan. She kept feeling that her mind was blank, but there was a voice in her heart that wanted to tell her, this weak chicken can't be beaten. Master, this is a bloodfire phoenix egg and can't be kicked. You should pick it up and bring it back. After speaking, she realized that her little master couldn't hear her at all. Moreover, with her current brain, she reckoned that she wouldn't understand what she meant even if she heard. A person who only had the word cultivation in her head basically had zero survival ability. Everything depended on her subconscious instincts for survival. Seeing how she couldn't even feel the hunger in her stomach before, it was obvious how miserable she was now. Qing Wan flapped its wings and flew to the little master's shoulder. Its furry little body nudged her neck. Poor master, don't be afraid. Qing Wan will protect you. In the next second, the expressionless little master cruelly reached out and slapped it. With a piu sound, it was sent flying. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The bloodfire phoenix egg that had been kicked away strenuously rolled back. Just as it touched Arbor's calf, she raised her small foot and made a kicking posture. Wait!
Pa.
Arbor couldn't even hear what Qing Wan said, so how could he hear the sound of an egg? This kick was even more ferocious. After being kicked against a tree, the bloodfire phoenix egg bounced back with a piu and once again rolled to Xiao Mu's side with a thud. Master! Qing Wan simply transformed into her human form. With a messy bird's nest hair, she ran to Arbor's side in tears and grabbed her little hand. Stop kicking. This is a bloodfire phoenix egg. It can fight and use big moves. It has no problem going up the mountain or down the sea. Even if it's not good, we can roast it and eat it. Chapter 11-13. He knew that his little master couldn't hear and could only see him with her spiritual senses. Qing Wan hastily made all sorts of strange movements, jumping and hopping. In the end, he even fished out an egg and knocked it twice. Then, he peeled the shell out and handed it to his little master, pointing at her little mouth. Arbor expressionlessly reached out to take that small egg and took a bite. She, who didn't feel anything after eating, directly stuffed the entire egg into her mouth. Classmate Qing Wan's mouth twitched. Why did he feel that this master was even more adorable than before? Arbor turned to look at that bloodfire phoenix egg and walked toward it. A small hammer suddenly appeared in her hand. Qing Wan, who was following behind her, suddenly widened her eyes and hastily exclaimed, "You can't eat it now, you can't." The bloodfire phoenix egg rolling under the tree shook its round body for no reason and angrily jumped up and down, emitting a soft cry. "You woman! Stop right there." Arbor's hand, which was holding the small hammer, was forcefully pulled back by Qing Wan, who rushed over afterwards. Qing Wan once again gestured with his hands and feet, using images to make Arbor understand that this bloodfire phoenix egg had to be roasted first before it could be eaten. The bloodfire phoenix egg jumped up and bumped into Qing Wan. "You damned bird! Don't always slander me. You idiot! Hurry up and retract the light on your body," Qing Wan shouted irritably. At this very moment, everyone in the entire Mystic Beast Forest was rushing over in a flurry. The bloodfire phoenix egg's red light was too dazzling. Even a blind person could find its direction, let alone in such a dark and overgrown forest. This round of light was simply a guiding light. The bloodfire phoenix egg said weakly, "I can't retract it." Fraud. Qing Wan directly picked up that egg and stuffed it into Arbor's arms. Then, she pulled her and ran into the depths of the forest. "Hurry and go, little master. Many people are chasing after us." "Where are you running to?" A shout came from midair. The speed of the approaching person was rather fast. In the blink of an eye, the huge shadow covered the entire area. This was a middle-aged man with a dark face, a square mouth, and a wide nose. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Arbor hugged a bloodfire phoenix egg and looked at the middle-aged man expressionlessly. Qing Wan could feel the man's strength, but fortunately, he was alone. Thus, he hurriedly pushed his little master behind him and gestured for her to leave first. "Master, quickly take the bloodfire phoenix egg and leave first. I'll hold him off here." Arbor's eyes flickered. At this moment, it was as if something was about to emerge from the depths of her mind, causing her to inadvertently frown. He pulled Qing Wan's arm and pulled it behind him. The little fellow looked up at the middle-aged man and suddenly threw the bloodfire phoenix egg. The corner of Qing Wan's mouth twitched. Then, she saw that in the next second, the little master turned around and gave a swift and happy flying kick, directly kicking the bloodfire phoenix egg towards the middle-aged man's face. Qing Wan. Actually, after such a long time, he should understand his little master very well. This kind of fraudulent thing was indeed something she would do. She was a little master who could even abandon Lady Holy Water for her own sect. Chapter 11:14. Little Master didn't like cute things at all, so naturally, she wouldn't have much affection for cute things in the depths of her heart. In her opinion, there was only a difference between those who were close and those who were distant. Those who were close should be protected, and those who were distant could be thrown away at any time. For example, this Bloodfire Phoenix egg right now was just a useless egg that could be thrown away at any time compared to Qingwan. It was useless. The strangest thing was that middle-aged man. He actually thought that the phoenix egg that his little master threw over was a trap. Therefore, he roared in the air, and his supreme mystic energy pressure increased. His chest and abdomen were filled with swirling mystic energy, and with a boom, he threw down the Bloodfire Phoenix egg that flew to his side. Classmate Qingwan suddenly felt some sympathy for this egg. Arbor didn't have any expression when she saw this. If she still had emotions, she would be furious. She wondered if this person was sick. Didn't he come for this oval thing? Why didn't he want it now? With such a pause, Arbor kicked the phoenix egg again and sent it flying. The middle-aged man kicked it again, but the two people kicked back and forth 2 or 3 times. The phoenix egg couldn't bear it anymore and became angry. These two insignificant humans. What did they think it was? It was the one and only Bloodfire Phoenix in the world. When Arbor kicked the middle-aged man, a red light of spiritual energy burst out from the phoenix egg. No, it didn't even look like spiritual energy, but a higher level of power. This terrifying power directly wrapped around the middle-aged man, and with a loud bang, his entire body exploded, turning into ashes. He died without a burial place. This happened in just a breath's time. The Crimson Phoenix egg was infuriated, and it cursed the heavens, cursed the earth, and cursed Xiao Mu. It pounced over and fiercely smashed Xiao Mu's large head with a bounce. You damn woman! What do you think this lord is? A ball? You can kick me here and there. This lord doesn't care about face. Arbor looked expressionlessly at the phoenix egg that was jumping in front of her and constantly hitting her little head. She didn't know what it was shouting about. You bastard. You don't want this lord for this weak little green bird. Do you know who this lord is? I am an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat can only condense one egg every 10,000 years, an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat is HHHHHH. You idiot. Why don't you come and curry favor with me? What kind of expression is that? Looking at the egg that was going crazy, Qingwan kindly reminded it weakly. That egg. What the hell? My name is Blazing Blood. I am the Blazing Blood Phoenix that only appears once every 10,000 years. Blazing Blood Supreme. Great Blood Blaze God. Okay. Great God. Great God. Qingwan's mouth twitched. Don't shout in front of Master. Her 5 senses are blocked. She can't hear or see anything. I can only use my spiritual sense to take a look. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg immediately let out a new round of angry roars, which were directed at Qingwan. You stupid bird. Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you trying to anger me to death?
Ah.
Come over here and gesture to her. Ask her why she doesn't want me. Why? This phoenix egg was really going crazy. Qingwan weakly moved to Arbor's side, tugged at her little master's sleeve, and gestured to her. Little master, the phoenix is asking you why you don't want her. Chapter 11:15. Arbor's 10,000-year expressionless face didn't have a single ripple of emotion. The phoenix egg became even angrier when it saw this. It jumped up and was about to smash her head, wishing it could wake her up. I'm a million times stronger than this stinky cyan bird. Why do you want him and not me? You idiot. You don't even know who I am, do you? Hurry up and tell me. Master. She can't speak. Why didn't you say so earlier? The phoenix egg's rage had reached a critical point. Soon after, it spread out its powerful divine sense and directly rushed into Arbor's consciousness. With a glance, it roared even more angrily. "You damned woman! You actually already contracted with another profound beast? Don't you know that you humans can only contract with one profound beast in your entire life? You actually formed a contract with a weak Xian beast so casually. With your talent, you clearly have a better choice." The phoenix egg communicated with her mental energy through her conscious pool, so Qiao Mu actually heard it. However, she subconsciously disliked this guy's tone of voice very much. Even if her memories were temporarily blocked, she was still a protective little fellow in her bones. Even if she had contracted a weak, profound beast, she didn't need this damned phoenix egg to point fingers at her from the side and make a fuss. "Woman, be grateful to me. Right now, let me help you remove the profound beast contract from before." The phoenix egg's voice was complacent. Unexpectedly, Arbor wasn't happy. With a move of her spiritual energy, she immediately communicated with it. "You're not allowed to remove it." Even though she didn't know what this phoenix egg wanted to do, she subconsciously felt that it wasn't anything good. Why? The Bloodfire phoenix egg was really angry. He had never seen such a person. A phoenix egg fell from the sky. Such a good opportunity was placed in front of her, and she actually didn't firmly grasp it. She would rather contract with a weak chicken than him, the great Bloodfire god. This made his heart extremely angry. "Give me a reason." The Bloodfire phoenix egg's voice was no longer soft and cute. Instead, it was filled with an invisible pressure, intensely pressuring Arbor. "I don't want you." Qiao Mu impatiently used her mental energy to communicate with him. She took out the sleeping little white squirrel from her chest and stroked its soft fur. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was so angry that it was about to burn itself into ashes. He suddenly laughed coldly. "Unfortunately, you can't refuse. This damned human actually wants to reject me?" He wanted to form a contract with her because of her talent. Instead of accepting his gift, he actually wanted to reject it. What a despicable human. On the phoenix egg's body, raging flames ignited. Those were the flames of his own anger. An extremely domineering and intimidating power seeped into the depths of Qiao Mu's conscious, not allowing her to refuse, and rushed towards that mental contract. In the blink of an eye, in the depths of his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been bundled together suddenly opened up and formed a wall. The golden talisman jade tome activated its self-protective consciousness and blocked the phoenix egg's spiritual energy. At the same time, an angry consciousness rushed out of Arbor's consciousness and flew towards the phoenix egg's mental contract. Arbor only felt his consciousness surge like a raging wave. The two fiercely collided. His pupils shrank. In the next moment, because of the endless pain in his consciousness, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The green vine in her sleeve instinctively drilled out and attacked the phoenix egg that was attacking her consciousness. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was stunned. Chapter 11:16. As a result, he couldn't react in time and was hit squarely by the vine whip. However, although he was still in the form of an egg, he was still a Bloodfire phoenix egg after all, so this vine whip couldn't do anything to him. He just felt very aggrieved and face-slapped. The Bloodfire deity discovered that this little girl really didn't like him from the bottom of her heart. It didn't seem like she was faking it, however. He was clearly the Bloodfire deity, the incomparable Bloodfire phoenix egg in the world. Who, in this world, didn't want him? Moreover, when he wanted to forcefully break the mental contract with that weak beast, he discovered that the weak beast wasn't simple at all. There was a powerful barrier in this little girl's conscience that controlled everything with absolute mental defense. He really didn't expect that this little girl, who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old, would have such a strange existence in her conscience. At this time, the second batch of people from Ani Prefecture arrived. Ani Prefecture's disciple, Gong Yang, led more than 50 disciples to Arbor's group. He couldn't help but exclaim when he saw her. "It's you?" After so many years, this little girl's appearance was firmly imprinted in the depths of his mind. 2 years ago, The battle on the Holy Water Sect's main peak nearly killed all the Ani Prefecture disciples on the spot. As Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple and a level 12 mystic cultivator, Gong Yang followed Hong Jinchuan from beginning to end and led his team to trample all over the Holy Water Sect's peaks. Before Arbor could open the Tianji treasure blueprint, Gong Yang collapsed from exhaustion. As a result, he escaped a calamity and didn't directly enjoy the Tianji treasure blueprint's attack. He only saw that little girl from the Holy Water Sect madly flinging out a divine weapon and indiscriminately killing many people. Afterwards, he was thrown off the main peak by a huge force and completely fainted. When he fled back to Ani Prefecture's stronghold like a stray dog, he heard from others that his master, Hong Jinchuan's life tablet, had completely shattered. Of the more than 300 Ani Prefecture disciples who went with him to encircle the Holy Water Sect, only a dozen or so escaped. Among them, there were many who were missing limbs and were mentally deranged. He didn't expect to meet this little girl from the Holy Water Sect again in the Mystic Beast Forest 2 years later. A trace of fear and jealousy flashed in Gong Yang's eyes. He hurriedly approached a robust old man in his 60s and loudly said, "It's her, Consecrator Li, a remnant of the Holy Water Sect. She might know the whereabouts of the sacred water. Also, she has a divine artifact, the Tianji treasure map." What? The old man named Consecrator Li was overjoyed when he heard the news. He looked at Arbor and laughed. That's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. There is indeed a type of person in this world who is gifted and born with great luck. Look, there's the divine artifact Tianji treasure map and the sacred beast phoenix egg. Consecrator Li's gaze fell directly on the bloodfire phoenix egg beside Arbor's leg, and his eyes revealed a greedy light. "Wait until I catch you, little girl. I'll interrogate you to find out the whereabouts of the holy water." Consecrator Li reached out his hand to grab Arbor as soon as he finished speaking. However, he caught nothing but air. Xiaomu's footsteps shifted extremely quickly, and she kicked that phoenix egg directly at the elder. She instinctively believed that this person also came to ask for the phoenix egg. That old man chattered so much earlier, but she didn't hear a single word. However, the Bloodfire Phoenix was very angry. Chapter 11-17. In his current situation, he was still an egg after all. Earlier, he had already used all his strength to finish off that middle-aged man in one move. But now, he was powerless to continue. The comical thing was that Pundit Li didn't dare to directly grab that phoenix egg emitting dense flames. He had just shaken out a net from his inner world and originally wanted to catch this egg first. Who knew that this egg was completely conscious? When it saw Pundit Li take out a net to catch it, it rolled back to Arbor's side as if the egg had grown legs. Pundit Li's aura sank, and he emitted a powerful mental pressure that crushed Arbor. Although Pundit Li's cultivation had been suppressed to level 1 spiritual cultivator, and he didn't dare to easily use spiritual energy under the heavenly law's nose, his mystic conscious had already reached level 9. He expected that he could do whatever he wanted in the lower star domain. He originally thought that this attack would definitely crush that little girl until she vomited blood and collapsed on the ground. However, things didn't go as he wished. This mystic conscious attack didn't cause the slightest ripple, and the little girl before him was still perfectly fine. However, he didn't know that if Arbor's conscious hadn't been damaged and his spiritual consciousness hadn't been greatly weakened, that old man would have already been sent to some unknown country by the backlash. The old man let out a faint sound of bewilderment and changed to using the power of a level 1 spiritual cultivator to suppress Arbor. This little girl is a bit dangerous. Pundit Li, you mustn't lower your guard. This girl has the Tianji treasure map on her. Gong Yang was halfway through his words when he suddenly saw Arbor turn around and cast a glance in his direction. He only felt that the little girl's eyes, which were like icy pearls, seemed to flash with saber light and sword shadows. It was abnormally vicious and malicious. How could Gong Yang know that Arbor's memories had been blocked at this time? However, she seemed to subconsciously remember this person. Many years ago, She had repeatedly flipped through many people's life lanterns in the ancestral hall. She had seen all the holy water sect disciples' images before they died. If her memory still existed at this time, she would definitely remember that this Gongyang in front of her was the person who made Fat Sister ruthlessly self-destruct back then. He had taken care of them on the first peak for 30 years like it was just one day. Fat Sis, who was responsible for all her daily needs, was gone because of this bastard. She stared at him coldly. Suddenly, she sent a wisp of her spiritual sense straight into the depths of Gong Yang's conscious. Compared to Reverend Li, Gong Yang's conscious was far inferior. This ferocious spiritual sense attack directly knocked Gong Yang back 3 steps. His mind was in a daze. He held his head and howled a few times. "Set up the formation," Consecrator Li shouted with a sullen face. More than 50 Ani Prefecture disciples rushed out from behind Gong Yang. They drew their swords in unison and set up an inescapable sword formation. The disciples of Ani Prefecture had cultivated this sword formation for many years, and their coordination could be said to be quite good. When the entire sword formation was in operation, it was as if thousands of swords had formed a red sun, swaying back and forth around Arbor. Consecrator Li laughed sinisterly, and his powerful cultivation once again suppressed Arbor's figure. "You can break her arms and legs, but don't take her life. This old man still wants to keep this little girl alive to inquire about the holy water's whereabouts." At this time, Gong Yang's pale face had also recovered some of his lucidity. He glared at Arbor and said resentfully, "Consecrator Li, I see that this little girl is a cultivation prodigy. If you use her body as a cultivation cauldron, Consecrator Li's cultivation will definitely rise to another level." Consecrator Li hadn't thought of this, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly at Gong Yang's reminder. Chapter 11-18. Gong Yang, your idea isn't bad. Consecrator Li looked at Arbor, who was standing in the sword circle, with a sinister smile. He shouted to the disciples, "Remember, don't harm her life. Just break the tendons in her arms and legs." Taking a closer look, you are indeed a peerless beauty. To be able to become this old man's cultivation furnace, it can be considered your good fortune. Haha. As the old man spoke, he laughed complacently. But he didn't forget to release the strongest mystic energy a level 1 spirit master could release to control Arbor, who was inside the sword circle. This sword circle's advantage was in coordination. It gathered the cultivations of over 50 people, turning them into a whole, condensing them into a ball. In a short period of time, it would be difficult for Arbor to break out of this sword circle by herself. Moreover, her conscience had been injured just now. Right now, she only felt a faint headache. The best method was to find a secluded place to sit down and continue cultivating, recovering her spiritual sense. But the current situation didn't allow her to stop and rest. She could only continue fighting. Of course, deep in her heart, she didn't fear anyone. Moreover, although she didn't know what they were blabbering about, seeing their vulgar expressions, she knew it wasn't anything good. Suddenly, something flashed in the depths of her mind. As if suddenly realizing something, she took out a round bead from her pocket. The Duan family's core ravaging thunder. Gong Yang suddenly screamed. "Quickly dodge, this thing is incomparably powerful." Gong Yang had actually been paying attention to Arbor all this time, because he was afraid she wouldn't take out the Tianji treasure blueprint at any time to kill them all. But after waiting for a while, the Tianji treasure blueprint didn't appear. Instead, a very dangerous core ravaging thunder came. Arbor didn't wait for him to finish screaming. She threw down a core ravaging thunder and instinctively stuck a teleportation talisman on herself and Blue Luan. With a whoosh, she moved out of the sword circle and instantly appeared 1,000 meters away, as fast as lightning. Consecrator Li's eyes widened. Before he could react, he heard a loud boom. The disciples of Ani Prefecture, who were gathered together, were in for a bad time. The disciples in the inner circle just happened to be at the core of the core ravaging thunder's explosion. They were blasted to pieces, missing limbs and mangled flesh. The dozen or so people in the outer circle were slightly better off, but their faces and bodies were also covered in blood. They were blown away by the blast of the explosion. The might of the core ravaging thunder had alarmed all the Xian beasts in half of the forest. For a moment, a loud roar came from the depths of the forest. Previously, because of the birth of the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, all the beasts were dormant and didn't dare to move. Now that they saw that the Phoenix egg didn't move, the boss of the forest finally dared to roar in anger. Arbor and Qingwan had already turned around and ran away, leaving behind an egg who was hopping and chasing after them. He was so angry that he shouted, "Stop, you guys stop!"
Pa!
A large, furry white tail suddenly attacked the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. If it wasn't for the fact that the Phoenix egg rolled quickly, it would have been hit by the tail. The tail missed and drew a white mark on the ground. Wherever it passed, a huge rock half the height of a person was directly smashed into pieces. Arbor stared blankly. She lowered her head and looked at her empty little hand. She turned her head to look at the snow-white little critter with an indescribable expression. If she was awake right now, she would definitely shout happily, "Chirp, chirp, you're awake." However, she was currently looking at them expressionlessly. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. Chapter 11:19. It was during this pause that an E-Prefecture's consecrator Li caught up with an unsightly expression, leading a group of defeated soldiers. With a wave of his hand, the remaining dozen or so in E-Prefecture's people surrounded Arbor. But everyone's faces were a bit pale as they looked at Arbor with trepidation. "Stinky girl. I really underestimated you." Consecrator Li shouted angrily, giving Gong Yang a meaningful look. Gong Yang nodded in understanding and secretly slid her feet twice. She suddenly reached out to grab Arbor's shoulder, a vicious glint flashing through her eyes. She intended to break Arbor's arm. Chirp! A white fluffy figure shot over like an arrow, angrily slapping Gong Yang's face with its little claws. With a pounce, Gong Yang screamed and raised his hand to cover his face. Fresh blood slid down from between his fingers. The little fat squirrel's movements were too fast. In just a breath's time, it succeeded in its surprise attack and clawed Gong Yang's eye blind. Consecrator Li cursed "useless thing" in his heart and directly rushed towards Arbor. He sneered and said, "Stinky girl, if you have the guts, try throwing another core ravaging thunder." He wasn't a fool. He naturally knew that a great killing weapon like the core ravaging thunder was an extremely rare item, even in a concealed weapon aristocratic family. Confirming that Arbor couldn't possibly have a second core ravaging thunder, Consecrator Li fearlessly struck out two palms in Arbor's direction, vigorous mystic energy suddenly encircling her. Gong Yang covered his face with one hand and screamed with a distorted expression, "Consecrator Li, quickly catch this stinky girl." Once Consecrator Li turned this stinky girl into a cultivation vessel, he would definitely make this girl beg for death in order to avenge the enmity of losing an eye today. This hateful girl actually dared to let a weak little mystic beast from God knows where scratch his eye blind. Gong Yang was so angry that he couldn't restrain himself. His entire body trembled in anger on the spot. Consecrator Li sneered. This old man's movements weren't slow. While using mystic energy to lock Arbor in place, he had already flashed in front of her and was about to grab her delicate little neck in the next second. Arbor suddenly raised his small hand. Consecrator Li was shocked, and he flew back like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Gong Yang, who was covering his eyes with one hand, also cried out in horror and suddenly retreated. The dozen or so people from the Ani prefecture who had encircled Xiao Mu on the outside also stumbled back a dozen or so steps, glaring at her in terror. Arbor looked at the crowd coldly and quietly put down his little hand. Consecrator Li saw that she didn't move for a long time and couldn't help but cry out in anger. This damned brat dared to trick him. The most hateful thing was that there were so many of them, but she actually succeeded in tricking them. How infuriating! Consecrator Li had a fierce look on his face. He jumped up and swept his strong old leg towards Arbor's feet. There was anger on his face. The dozen or so in Prefecture's disciples once again surrounded him like wolves and tigers. Just at this time, Arbor once again raised her small hand and made a small action of throwing a core-ravaging thunder. Consecrator Lee was greatly alarmed. He quickly rolled on the ground like a gourd and rolled to the side. He hurriedly opened his defensive barrier and prepared for a full defense. Those dozen or so in Prefecture's disciples were so scared that their faces were pale. They rolled on the ground and loudly gasped for breath. They were so scared that they retreated again. However, after half a day, there was still no movement. Consecrator Lee and the others were dumbfounded as they looked at the little girl who had played them for a fool. Chapter 11:20. Damn it! Pundit Lee's face was already contorted. He was extremely furious. Being toyed with by this wretched girl time and time again, he only felt that his old face was burning hot, and he was abnormally embarrassed. Gong Yang covered one of his eyes at the side and screamed urgently, "Pundit, don't fall for her trick. This wretched girl is only scaring us. She definitely doesn't have a large firearm like the core-ravaging thunder on her. She doesn't have it. Don't hesitate. Quickly catch her. Don't let her escape." Gong Yang urged from the side, "Don't forget that she's the only one who knows the whereabouts of the holy water and the Tianji treasure map on her." Xiao Mu blinked, unable to understand why these people kept crowding around her. Logically speaking, they wanted that round egg, and she had already given it to them, but they were still surrounding her, not knowing what they wanted to do. So annoying. There was time for her to cultivate. It was better to kill all these people who were hindering her from cultivating. Otherwise, they would always be buzzing around her like dead flies. Arbor separated her palms, and a wave of spirit energy appeared on her body. Suddenly, Pundit Lee and the rest were stunned to find that the soil on the ground rolled up the leaves like a wriggling dragon. An earth-shattering layer of soil suddenly rose up from the ground, turning over and smashing down on everyone. Earth Spirit. Pundit Lee was instantly stunned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell at a glance that Arbor was using one of the 5 spirits, the Earth Spirit. This wretched girl had already comprehended the Earth Spirit at such a young age. Comprehending the Earth Spirit in a place like the lower star domain? Or could it be that she wasn't from the lower star domain at all? Pundit Lee jumped in fright and hurriedly retreated, trying to escape from this earth-shattering wall with lightning speed. Boom! The tumbling earth wall came crashing down, instantly drowning the dozen of an Prefecture's disciples who had lost their arms and legs and looked like arrows at the end of their flight. Gong Yang saw that the situation was not good and turned to escape. Suddenly, something round rolled all the way to his feet. Gong Yang lowered his head to look, and his eyes suddenly bulged. He let out a miserable cry, and before he could escape, he was sent flying by a huge explosive force. This time, he happened to be in the center of the explosion of the core-ravaging thunder. How could he survive? His entire body was flung out and ruthlessly smashed into a broken old tree before tumbling to the ground with a boom. His upper body fell to the ground like a puppet, and he couldn't even close his eyes before he died. It was as if he was in complete disbelief that Xiao Mu, this little fellow, would actually carry a second core-ravaging thunder on her and casually throw it away. When Consecrator Lee broke through the soil layer and jumped out with a loud shout, he saw Gong Yang's tragic death before he died. His broken body was hanging on half of a withered tree. It was very scary. Consecrator Lee's scalp went numb. He turned around and saw that he was the only one left in the huge Oni Prefecture team. This little girl's battle prowess could not be judged based on her current cultivation. High Official Lee already had thoughts of retreating. Between treasures and his life, Consecrator Lee still cherished his life. The core-ravaging thunder on the little girl was especially terrifying. Compared to what he had seen before, it was even more powerful. It could actually blast Gong Yang, a level 12 mystic cultivator, into smithereens in an instant. How dehumanizing was this? Chapter 11:21. He didn't know if there was a third core ravaging thunder on this damned girl. He couldn't afford to gamble. After the earth layer was turned over, Mr. Lee's body was already covered in blood, and he couldn't fight anymore. Since he already had the intention to retreat, he made a prompt decision to fly backwards. But after running for a few steps, he saw a snow-white squirrel-like little beast squatting there, eyeing him covetously. Its pair of small eyes were staring at him just like that. Consecrator Lee immediately flew into a rage. With a roar, he kicked over. "Get out of my way." Damn it, even a weak little beast could casually block his way now. It was simply seeking its own death. Mr. Lee's face was ugly. He was sure that his kick would definitely send this weak beast flying into the sky. He didn't care whether it was dead or alive. Anyway, if it dared to block his way, he would kill it all. However, the flying into the sky that he expected didn't happen. On the contrary, he clearly heard the crisp sound of his leg bones breaking. He immediately wailed, and cold sweat dripped down his head. That kick just now was as if he had kicked a piece of iron plate, causing his leg bones to fracture.
Don't joke around.
He was a level 1 spiritual master. For someone with his cultivation level, his whole body had been trained to the point where it was impregnable. Not to mention kicking such a weak little beast. Even if he was hit by the core ravaging thunder just now, it wouldn't be enough to make him so miserable. So to say that this little beast wasn't a weak beast. Could it be a spiritual beast? Or a divine beast? Consecrator Lee was flabbergasted as he stared at the little weak beast that was constantly stretching its body and suddenly grew to the size of a small hill in front of him. Dragging his broken old leg, he took a few steps back and swallowed his saliva in panic. Why did it turn out like this? What kind of monster was this? He had never seen a little squirrel that could grow to the size of a mountain. His eyes bulged, and he subconsciously shrank back. When she turned her head, she saw the slender figure standing under the tree. Her evil guts welled up, and she pounced at Xiao Mu, her hands grabbing for Xiao Mu's slender neck. No, he must catch this damned girl in his hands to save his life. Bang! A white, furry tail suddenly covered the top of his head and swept over, instantly sending the old man, who was trying to grab Xiao Mu, flying. He crashed headfirst into a tree with a thud, and he tumbled to the ground with a cry of pain. The little white squirrel that had turned into the size of a small hill had a pair of small eyes that flashed with a cold light. It contained a deterrent force that Consecrator Lee could not understand. When he fell to the ground, he felt as if his internal organs had been flipped upside down by the tail. After enduring for 2 seconds, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with bits of his internal organs. With this spray, his aura became much more dispirited, and he fell to the ground on the verge of death, leaving only a pair of frightened eyes staring at the giant beast in front of him.
He was scared.
No, he regretted it. "Let me go." Mr. Lee coughed heavily and turned to look at Arbor. He said word by word, "This old man can, cough, serve you as my master." However, Arbor didn't know what he was mumbling about and didn't give him any response. The little white squirrel saw that its little master's face was incomparably cold and knew that its master didn't want to let this damned old man live. Chapter 11:22. Since that was the case, then he would take care of the old man. His long tail immediately swept over again. Don't be fooled by the large, furry tail that looked very gentle and warm when it landed on Consecrated Lee's body. Its might was comparable to that of a giant pillar reaching the heavens. He was instantly smashed into mincemeat, and his head was smashed into pieces and buried in the ground. Roar! After the hill-sized squirrel lord finished dealing with the old man, he suddenly roared toward the depths of the forest. The dense pressure spread out, causing the group of small beasts that were originally restless and uneasy in the entire forest, intending to run to the base to attack the humans, to be so scared that they covered their heads and scurried away. One after another, they pitifully retreated back to their own small territories.
So terrifying.
Even that boss in the forest didn't dare to make a sound at this time. This dense and terrifying aura was clearly on par with the aura when the Bloodfire Phoenix egg was born.
Terrifying.
The appearance of a holy beast Bloodfire Phoenix egg in the Mystic Beast Forest was already frightening enough. Why did such a big shot appear now? Do Heping, Mu Boming, and the others, who were desperately rushing toward this end of the forest, were shaken by the little squirrel's roar halfway and tumbled to the ground on the spot. The ground of the entire Mystic Beast Forest was faintly trembling. The members of the group rolled all over the ground. They struggled to get up in a fluster and looked for trees, boulders, and other things to hide behind in their fright.
Fuck.
What was going on? The two earth-shattering explosions earlier had caused them to look for cover everywhere like quails. Now, there was the roar of a giant beast. Can't you just let me travel happily? After waiting for a while and discovering that there was nothing out of the ordinary in their surroundings, Mu Boming and Do Heping walked out from behind a large tree with strange expressions. When they turned around, they saw Qin Guelu and the eldest young sir leading a group of people from the Qin estate rushing over at a moderate speed. They didn't appear to be in a sorry state and seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll along the way, which made family head Mu and family head Do's teeth ache. So, everyone is here. Qin Xian looked at the people from the Do and Mu clans with a grin. With a jade-like beauty and a distinguished and elegant demeanor, this eldest young master merely stood there and immediately caused Miss Jilan of the Mu family to blush. Family head Qin and young master Qin don't seem to care much about the phoenix egg. Mu Boming tugged at the corner of his mouth with a fake smile. Upon seeing this, Qin Guelu chuckled and said, "It's not about caring or not. Although this phoenix egg is good, there is only one of it after all. Whether or not we can get it depends on fate. Let's just leave it to fate." Mu Boming's lips quivered, and then he laughed in mock embarrassment. Family head Qin is indeed open-minded. Family head, if you don't go over now, it'll be too late. Mu Zijuan reminded with a taut face. The red clouds in the sky that had been dyed red by the birth of the phoenix egg were slowly fading away. If he didn't rush over now, he wouldn't even be able to tell which direction the phoenix egg was in. Mu Boming hurriedly responded and nodded. "Let's go." Thus, he no longer argued with the Qin family and hurriedly led the group in the direction of the phoenix egg's flash. The people from the Do family naturally weren't willing to fall behind. Do Heping cupped his hands at family head Qin before hastily leading the group in pursuit. The two groups traversed the great Mystic Beast Forest in tandem as they chased after each other. Chapter 11:23. The two teams traversed the great Mystic Beast Forest one after the other in pursuit. After running for so long, they had truly exhausted some of their stamina, and some of the youths in the team with inferior cultivations had fallen behind. Qin Xian leisurely walked beside family head Qin, but a moment later, he asked with a smile, "Did you guys notice that the phoenix egg is currently moving forward?" After he mentioned it, everyone abruptly realized that the phoenix egg had shifted forward by at least several hundred meters from where they had seen it previously. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled as he lightly struck his palm with his fist. "Say, do you guys think that the phoenix egg has grown legs and is purposely avoiding us?" Everyone. "Eldest young sir, your joke isn't funny at all." Yet Qin Guelu said with a smile, "Phoenix eggs are born with intelligence, so it's not impossible." Squeak, squeak. Suddenly, a small mouse with sparse hair on its head popped out from the thicket, and its beady red eyes glanced at them. A damned mouse. The startled Yang Fingyan's fingers moved slightly, and a burst of mystic energy pounced at that mouse. After a soft zung sound, the small mouse was struck by the mystic energy, and it rolled. With a kick of its hind legs, it fled through the thicket in terror. Qin Guelu creased his brows imperceptibly. Mu Jilan suddenly burst out in laughter, and her tone was not without mockery as she said, "You can't even kill a mouse." Yang Fingyan's small face flushed red under her veil. How could she have known that this mouse was so strange? She had clearly sent out a burst of level 4 mystic energy earlier, but a mouse actually slipped away. Mu Boming waved his hand with a smile and said, "Jilan, let's go." "Yes, family head." Mu Xilon pursed her lips and revealed a mocking smile again. When she passed by eldest young Sir Qin, she even snuck a glance at him. However, she didn't expect to meet eldest young Sir's smiling gaze. This was great. Her maiden heart thumped wildly, and she hurriedly followed family head Mu. On the side, Mu Zijuan saw this, and a sneer surfaced in his mind. Love-struck fool. Father. Suddenly, a voice called out. Dou Heping hurriedly turned his head and saw his daughter, Dou Fengqi, catching up from behind. Phoenix Pool. Father. Dou Fengqi stomped her feet and ran forward with an aggrieved expression. Why are all of you here? It's a long story. Let's talk as we walk. Seeing that Mu Boming and the others had already set off, Dou Heping hurriedly ran after them. At this time, the ground had returned to normal. However, just as the eldest young master had said, that hateful phoenix egg kept moving forward, as if it was deliberately avoiding everyone. Father, what's going on? What was that red light? The Bloodfire Phoenix egg has descended. Now, all the powers have gathered here. Those who can come are all here. Don't worry about anything else. What's going on with you? Aren't you training in the secret realm? Don't mention it, Father. Dou Fengqi angrily stomped her feet. I was forcefully sent out. It's that woman's doing. Which woman? Who else could it be? The Crown Princess.
What?
Dou Heping actually paused in shock before quickly running again. We'll talk about this later. Chapter 11:24. The urgent matter at hand was to see what was going on with the phoenix egg. Behind Dou Heping, a young lady who resembled Dou Fengqi in appearance but looked slightly younger couldn't resist pursing her lips and saying with a smile, so useless. We agreed on a month of training, but we were forcefully transported out in less than half a month.
Dou Fengyao, shut your mouth.
Dou Fengqi retorted with a cold expression. If you went, you might end up worse than me.
All right.
When Dou Heping saw that these two sisters had started dog-eat-dog again, he could only separate them with a headache. Stop bickering, you two sisters. It's more important to take care of proper business right now. The group continued to run for a while as they spoke. The Dou family and Mu family couldn't bear the enormous physical exhaustion, and more disciples fell behind. Dou Heping and Mu Boming's expressions were slightly unsightly. In contrast, Qin Guilu looked nonchalant as he turned to the two of them and said with a smile, Family head Mu, family head Dou, leave it to fate, leave it to fate.
Pooh.
Leave it to fate my ass. Dou Heping and Mu Boming secretly cursed Qin Guilu, that old fox, in their hearts. Look at that red light. Mu Xilon suddenly raised her hand and pointed ahead. Everyone looked over and saw that the red light ahead had dimmed considerably, so faint that it was almost indistinguishable. Fuck, the phoenix egg couldn't have been picked up by someone, right? A Qin estate disciple realized the truth. Upon hearing this, Yang Fengyan immediately said indignantly, Impossible. It takes some time for a phoenix egg to recognize a master. It hasn't even been an hour since the phoenix egg descended into the world. Even contracting the phoenix egg won't be that fast. Qin Guilu nodded, and his gaze flickered as he glanced at eldest young Sir Qin beside him. The latter pursed his lips at him disinterestedly. Let's go over and take a look. That phoenix egg seems to have stopped. That's right. Although that red light in the forest had dimmed considerably, it finally stopped moving around crazily. Now that everyone had a clear target, they went over quickly. It didn't take long for them to find the source of the red light. Pushing aside the overgrown branches, they ran over to take a look. Everyone couldn't help but be startled. He saw a large piece of woodland, with only some debris and broken branches left. A deep pit was blasted in the middle, and the surrounding grass and trees were all razed to the ground. Thinking of the two huge tremors they heard before, everyone couldn't help but be speechless. After walking a little further, they saw a slender figure in plain clothes sitting with her back facing them. Looking at her back, she was actually a little girl. Everyone hurriedly quickened their pace and surrounded him, but they were also very careful to see if there were any traps under their feet. It's you. Do Fengqi circled to the front and saw the young lady's face. She couldn't help but cry out in alarm with a face full of resentment. Qin Guilu was also taken aback, and he involuntarily cupped his hands toward the seated figure. Miss Chiao. At this moment, Miss Chiao's body was covered in a faint red light, which was very dazzling. She was sitting in front of a group of people. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she didn't move at all. She didn't even bat an eyelid. Seeing this, Do Fengqi couldn't help but be furious. She rushed forward and pointed at Arbor, then said angrily, "All right. You threw us out of the mystic realm one by one. I thought you would be able to stay in there for a long time by yourself. I didn't expect you to come out as well. Is there any meaning in doing such a thankless task?" Fengqi. Second young Sir Do frowned slightly as he reprimanded. Chapter 11:25. Second Brother. Do Fengqi stomped her feet in anger. "It's all because of her that I—" "Shut up." Second young Sir Do glared impatiently at his younger sister. On the side, his younger sister, Do Fengmiao, couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you grumbling about when your skills are inferior to others?" Do Fengmiao. All right. Do Heping was about to be angered to death by these two sisters. They were still fighting like dogs in front of a group of outsiders, making the Do family a laughingstock for no reason. Mu Boming's eyes flickered, and he walked forward and cupped his hands. "Miss Chiao, can you explain to us why you're covered in red light? Did you pick up a phoenix egg?" "Hand over the bloodfire phoenix egg." A trace of jealousy and hatred flitted through Yang Fengyan's eyes, and her eyes under the veil glared venomously at Arbor. She already knew that this crown princess who had parachuted into the Mo kingdom was the little maidservant who had previously stayed in their Qin estate and disfigured her face by whipping her. As a result, her face had yet to fully recover, so she could only wear a veil when she went out. She seemed to be called something like Mu Xiaobao, that lowly slut who hooked up with men all day long. Not only did she not seduce eldest cousin and second cousin, she even hooked up with the crown prince now. Simply abominable. Right hand over the phoenix egg. The Qin estate's disciples also stared fervently at the red light on Arbor's body, and they involuntarily took a few steps forward. "Withdraw." Eldest young Sir Qin swept a cold gaze over them, promptly sweeping away the impulsive emotions in their heads. Under the eldest young Sir's intimidating gaze, they shuddered and subconsciously retreated a few steps. It was only then that eldest young Sir Qin turned around and chuckled at the little stoic sitting cross-legged in front of everyone. He called out, "Xiaobao, what are you doing sitting here by yourself?" Yang Fengyan clenched her fists and abruptly took a step forward, pulling out her sword to stab at Arbor. "Cousin, don't waste your breath on this woman. Just make her hand over the phoenix egg." The eldest young Sir nimbly grabbed her arm, a trace of fury flitting through his eyes. "Who told you to attack?" Cousin. Cousin. Yang Fengyan struggled with a pained expression on her face. Her wrist felt like it was about to break when he grabbed it. Seeing this, Mu Jilan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Her fingertips moved stealthily, and an attack talisman shot towards Arbor. Eldest young Sir Qin hadn't expected that Mu Jilan would also suddenly make a move. Unable to stop her in time, the talisman flashed by at an extraordinarily fast speed. He watched as the attack talisman flew towards Arbor, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared, and Mu Jilan's attack talisman missed. When everyone looked closely, they saw that Arbor's expression hadn't changed, and his posture hadn't changed at all. He had only moved a little, and now he was 5 feet away from them. Damn it! Mu Jilan was enraged, and 2 talismans swiftly darted out between her fingers. Just as she was about to release them, eldest young Sir Qin flicked his sleeve, causing her to stagger. "What are you doing?" Qin Xian glanced at Mu Jilan in dissatisfaction. Suddenly, they heard a gust of wind, and 2 Do family disciples simultaneously pounced towards Arbor, greed flickering in their eyes. Hand over the phoenix egg. Those 2 long swords intertwined to form a sword shadow and slashed towards Arbor. Bang! Arbor's figure once again moved 5 feet away. Chapter 11:26. This time, Mu Boming finally saw it clearly, and his expression involuntarily changed as he exclaimed in shock, "It's an illusion talisman matrix." Arbor herself wasn't here at all, so it was useless no matter how they tried to kill her. In the end, they were completely fooled by a talisman matrix. Everyone's complexions were either green or white, extremely unsightly. Mu Boming suddenly shouted loudly, "The illusion talisman matrix can't be too far away from the main body. She's nearby." After saying this, he charged into the nearby forest. Qin Xian followed closely behind and sneered, "Family head Mu, you're already so old. Why are you still so angry?" Mu Boming turned a deaf ear to him, and his figure flitted past. Everyone started a carpet search nearby, and sure enough, they discovered Arbor's main body behind a concealed thicket in less than half an hour. At this moment, she was standing behind a patch of charred dead wood. She was dressed in plain clothes and was cold and cheerless. She was expressionless, and her gaze was even extremely icy as she stared at them. What was exciting was that a layer of faint red light also floated around her main body, enveloping her within. It was as if her entire body was enveloped by a wisp of bright and enchanting flame. "It's a phoenix egg! A bloodfire phoenix egg!" A Mu family disciple exclaimed excitedly. Sure enough, that round phoenix egg was squatting steadily next to Arbor. Mu Zijuan, who had always been relatively calm, couldn't keep his composure this time. His breathing stopped, and he clenched his fists as he stepped forward and said, "The phoenix egg is right here. If you want it, then rely on your own abilities." Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What's the use of relying on your own abilities? Don't tell me you can strip someone else of their spiritual contract and take the phoenix egg back from a new contract? In your dreams, it still depends on whether the phoenix egg itself is willing or not." Spiritual contract? Everyone was startled, and only then did they clearly see Arbor's current appearance. Not only was her body enveloped by a faint red light, there was even a cluster of burning flames lightly leaping about in the center of her forehead. A mystic beast contract imprint. Damn it, we were a step too late. Miss Qiao has already contracted with the phoenix egg.
Ah,
My phoenix egg, you actually contracted my bloodfire phoenix egg. Yang Fengyan screamed, unable to control herself. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist laughing again, and his thin lips curled up as he glanced at Yang Fengyan with slight mockery. "Younger cousin, I remember that you are merely a level 4 mystic cultivator right now. How could there be a contract with a profound beast? You're still far from being able to form a contract." Yang Fengyan blushed under the veil. She was planning to shamelessly beg the patriarch to leave the phoenix egg for her. With her aptitude, she would definitely be able to break through to become a level 10 mystic cultivator in less than 10 years. At that time, wouldn't she be able to form a contract with the phoenix egg? The young master could not be bothered with his ridiculous cousin who was talking to herself. He turned to Arbor and said, "Xiao Bao, is it because the contract is not completed yet? Is that why you haven't left yet?" Xiao Mu coldly looked at them. Do Fengqi said angrily, "What kind of look is that? Do you believe that I'll dig out your eyeballs?" Ever since she was forcefully transported out of the mystic realm, Do Fengqi had been stifling her anger until now. Now that she saw Arbor, it truly was both old and new grudges surfacing in her heart. Without waiting for family head Do to shout for her to stop, Do Fengqi pounced over and drew her sword to stab straight at Arbor. Chapter 11:27. Bitch, who told you to make me lose everything in the secret realm?
Bang.
Arbor didn't seem to move, but her foot had already ruthlessly kicked Do Fengqi's stomach. Do Fengqi couldn't even get close to the corner of her clothes before she was swiftly sent flying. She crashed heavily into a nearby tree and spat out a mouthful of blood from the severe internal injuries. Everyone turned pale with fright, and they all looked at Arbor as if they were looking at a monster. Do Fengqi was a level 8 mystic cultivator at any rate, but she couldn't even take a single blow from the crown princess? Why? It wasn't that Do Fengqi was too weak, but that the crown princess was too strong. They didn't expect that after not seeing her for several days, the crown princess's cultivation would actually skyrocket to this extent. At this time, Arbor suddenly moved. Like a killing Buddha carved from jade, she directly attacked the two Do family disciples standing in front of her. With two snaps, those two Do family disciples hadn't even recovered their wits when their heads already tilted slightly and hung in Arbor's hands. Mu Xilan screamed in horror. Seeing Arbor's ice bead-like eyes turn to her and lock onto her, she couldn't help but shriek in fright and terror. Her terrifying and ice-cold gaze was like a killing machine, completely devoid of any humanity. Qin Xian already saw Arbor's abnormality. She was usually cold and expressionless, but she definitely wouldn't be like this, where she didn't recognize her own family and wanted to kill everyone she saw. Could it be that she suffered from qi deviation while cultivating? Qin Xian was alarmed, and he rushed towards Arbor. Yang Fengyan shrieked behind him. "Cousin, what are you going over there for?" "Cousin, that woman is a lunatic." "Xiaobao, how are you?" "Calm down first." Qin Xian had just spoken when he saw the little girl aiming a punch at his chest. This punch clearly already had the strength of a 13th level cultivation base. When the punch came down, Qin Xian's robes were blown back by a strong current of air. He couldn't take it head-on and didn't want to retaliate, so he could only dodge. "Cousin!" Yang Fengyan let out a dying scream. Xiao Mu's unfeeling eyes abruptly flitted in her direction. As soon as Yang Fengyan met Arbor's extremely cold eyes, she was like a duck that had its voice cut off. Her screams came to an abrupt end. What a terrifying gaze! Was that a human's gaze? Arbor was clearly like a moving jade statue. It was a jade statue filled with a terrifying aura that could kill people at any time. After rushing into the crowd, it took the lives of several disciples. "Everyone, quickly disperse." Second young Master Do shouted in alarm. "Miss Chow must have gone mad from cultivating. He's probably not in his right mind and won't be able to recognize us. Everyone, don't fight her head-on. Spread out. Don't move, don't move." Hearing this, all the disciples present slowed down their footsteps. Their bodies stiffened as they subconsciously slowed down their breathing. Arbor's footsteps moved slightly, and he slowly walked past the scattered group of disciples. When he arrived in front of a disciple whose eyes were wide open and whose body was stiff, he was about to walk over. That disciple suddenly punched the back of his head. "Go to hell." Second young Master Do's pupils shrank slightly. However, Xiao Mu abruptly turned around and also threw a punch behind her. Her fair and tender hand directly collided with that disciple's fist. The fist wind traveled up the disciple's arm, and suddenly, the disciple's arm bone was pulverized into powder. Chapter 11:28. That seemingly pink and tender little fist was actually immensely powerful. Following the momentum, it smashed into the disciple's face, causing it to cave in and completely deform. That disciple didn't even have time to cry out before he fell heavily to the ground and stopped breathing. The surrounding disciples were all frightened by her terrifying technique, and they all cried out in alarm as they hastily broke into a run. Arbor's figure flitted past, and she picked up the disciples who were about to make a move like little chicks. She exerted force from her fingertips, and several cracking sounds were heard. Those people's necks all drooped, and they didn't make another sound. "Don't move." Second young Master Do was simply infuriated to death by this group of brainless fellows. He told them not to move, but they still insisted on moving. How mentally tiring was it to have to lead a group of pig teammates? Didn't they realize that Miss Chow didn't react at all when she saw them at the beginning? It was only because one of them attacked her that she started to flip out. In other words, as long as they didn't move, she should calm down. After second young Master Do finished shouting, no one dared to move carelessly in the slightest. Mu Xilan was so frightened that she cried. Her body trembled as tears streamed down her face, and she stared fixedly at Arbor, who flashed past her. She only dared to slow her breathing and sob softly when she saw that she had gone a bit further away. Within the range of Arbor's spiritual perception, There were no longer any enemies obstructing her cultivation. All she saw in her spiritual perception were chunks of wooden dummies, and no one would make a fuss and disturb her. Thus, this little fellow turned around and didn't bother to pay them any more attention. Her plain-colored figure flashed and disappeared into the flowers and trees. When the phoenix egg beside her saw this, it also skipped and followed. Little Bao. Eldest young Master Qin was anxious and was about to chase after her when Yang Fengyan desperately blocked him and shrieked, "Cousin, what are you doing? You want to follow this murderous demoness? She killed so many of our Qin family's disciples just now." Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the trees in front of them rustled, and a large furry head suddenly popped out from within. "Rat!" Yang Fengyan suddenly shrieked, her eyes wide open. A rat that looked like a hill, ah. Whoever saw such a rugged-looking mouse? Blind. Mu Zijuan coldly shouted, "It's clearly a large squirrel." As he spoke, the large squirrel's fluffy white tail suddenly swept over, and with a rumble, everyone was shocked and retreated several dozen feet. Seeing that no one was following it, the big squirrel gave them a warning glare, turned around, and moved its fat butt away, huffing and puffing. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that it's Miss Xiao's Xian beast? A Dou family disciple asked weakly. Tisk, impossible. Where did she get so many profound beasts? Mu Zhilan raged. Doesn't she already have the divine bird Qingluan? Now he even picked up a phoenix egg to form a contract with. But Miss Xiao can draw summoning talismans. Seventh Master Mu also said that the divine bird Qingluan was summoned by Miss Xiao. That's true. Mu Zhilan clenched her fists. What's so great about a summoning talisman? Our Mu family also has a summoning talisman. Perhaps it can summon a rare sacred beast. At the mention of the Mu family's only summoning talisman, family head Mu's expression looked like he had stepped on dog poop, because he discovered that the Mu family's precious summoning talisman had disappeared. Chapter 11:29. Of course, Mu Boming simply didn't know that his good daughter Mu Qianqian had taken this family treasure summoning talisman and offered it to Master Black Cat. After Black Cat died in Nimpan Tower, this Mu family's soul summoning talisman also vanished into thin air. After Arbor distanced itself from the crowd, it searched for a suitable place to cultivate as usual. Wherever Arbor went, this egg would hop there. As it hopped, it would chatter nonstop. What are you angry for? I'm the one who should be angry. I, the great Bloodfire deity, want a contract with you. You're still being picky and picky. I really don't know where you monster came from. How can there be someone like you in this world? Qingluan walked next to this egg and said expressionlessly, "Don't grumble anymore. Master doesn't even recognize me and little Chirpy, let alone a strange egg like you." What egg? This one is the great Bloodfire deity, Qi Shui. Qingluan speechlessly swept a glance at this egg that would go crazy from time to time. Where exactly did you pop out from? Underground. This one has been dormant for so many years and finally woke up. I didn't expect that the other person wouldn't be willing to choose me as master. You really popped out from a rock? Qingluan asked curiously. If Eggy had eyes, it would definitely glare fiercely at Qingluan. If it wasn't for the fact that when it infiltrated the little lady's conscious and clashed with the damn squirrel's mental contract, it might not have been able to successfully contract with this damn child. But speaking of which, this master of his really was an oddball. Humans usually could only have one contract beast in their lifetime, but her mental strength was enough to contract two. Moreover, he and that white squirrel weren't ordinary mystic beasts. If a normal person's mental conscious encountered a saint-level contract beast, they would have long exploded and died, or become an idiot from the backlash of failing to contract. But she didn't. It was just that when the two sacred beasts' mental strengths clashed in her conscious, it caused a certain amount of damage to her conscious. This was also quite strange, alright. At that time, the Bloodfire Phoenix egg thought that the little squirrel was just a weak beast and that it could expel it from Arbor's conscious with just a wave of its spiritual power. However, he didn't expect the other party to be evenly matched with him. Two powerful psychic powers flipped around in Arbor's conscious at the same time. If it was anyone else, they would have been foaming at the mouth and killed on the spot. Fortunately, she had the golden talisman Jade Tome to protect her in Arbor, which allowed her to survive the calamity. The phoenix egg jumped a little and noticed that there were extremely loud footsteps coming from behind it. He hurriedly jumped into Qingwan's arms and said in a proud voice, "This lord is tired. I'll allow you to carry this lord." Qingwan. She suddenly had an impulse to grab the hammer in her master's hand and smash this broken egg to death. "Admit it, if you're a coward." He was really asking for a beating with that arrogant look on his face. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A hairless rat suddenly crawled out from Arbor's foot. No sooner said than done. Arbor didn't even blink. Out of instinct, it instantly pierced through the rat's head with an ice blade. Qingwan shook its body and muttered to itself, "It can't be a mutated zombie rat or something like that, right?" He felt that his master seemed to be abnormally sensitive to zombies and even mutated zombie beasts. If it was an ordinary rat, his master might not even look at it.
But now...
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Suddenly, 4 or 5 rats crawled out from the bushes. Xiao Mu sent several ice blades flying over with an abnormally fast swish. Chapter 1130. After piercing those rats' heads at the same time, Arbor couldn't delay any longer and immediately ran into the depths of the forest instinctively. Seeing her abnormal movements, Qingwan hastily dashed after her. Seeing this, the little white squirrel turned into a furry ball with a whoosh and hopped onto Qingwan's shoulder. Its little paw even attempted to kick down the egg in Qingwan's arms. Qingwan, these two guys really were dog-eat-dog things. Qingwan hurriedly pushed aside Chirpy's little paw and comforted, "All right, this egg is our partner in the future.
Don't hit it yet."
Let's go see what Little Master discovered."
"Bah."
"We're not partners," 2 Tsundra voices indignantly said at the same time. Qingwan didn't succeed in being the peacemaker, so it simply couldn't be bothered with them. Hugging the egg and carrying the little squirrel, it chased after Arbor in front of it, shuttling back and forth in the forest. After running for a few minutes, Qingwan also stopped when it saw its little master stop in front of it. When it focused its eyes, it immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. There were probably over 10,000 rats densely packed ahead, and they were currently attacking Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others together. The people from the Qin estate had long disappeared, but 2 unfamiliar teams appeared next to Mu Boming and the others. Qingwan leaped in front of its little master. "Master, don't go over." Arbor also didn't have any intention of going over. She stepped on a tree branch and looked down at the people besieged by the rats from above. If there were a few blind little mice squeaking and running toward her, she would take care of them. Her movements were fast and ruthless, not giving anything a chance to get close to her. Mu Boming, who was fighting a hard battle with the rats below, almost fainted from anger when he looked up. He couldn't help but roar at the branch. "Miss Chiao, can you have your summoned beast come down and fight?" Miss Chiao squatted on the branch and looked at them expressionlessly. Her appearance was truly cold and heartless. Mu Boming was so angry that a mouthful of blood welled up in his heart. Mu Jilan could not help but say angrily, "Patriarch, why are you wasting words with her? How could someone like her be willing to save us so easily? Drive the rat swarm over there." Mu Zijuan angrily kicked a disciple beside him. "Are you an idiot? I'm telling you to surround them. Don't let the rats open a path." Currently, Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others were at the center of the circle, and there were many Do clan and Mu clan disciples standing around them. The disciple who'd been kicked by Mu Zijuan had already felt his limbs go limp from fighting with the rat horde. After being kicked by Mu Zijuan again, he was furious and unwilling to accept this outcome. In his unstable state of mind, several rats pounced on him and bit him, causing him to cry out in pain. He lost his footing and immediately fell down. This fall was fatal on the spot. He was immediately dragged into the group of rats by dozens of large rats that pounced on him. Within a breath's time, he was completely devoured. When Mu Jilin saw this, she shuddered fiercely and wailed, "What do we do, Patriarch?" Mu Boming's head also exploded. Looking at the rat swarm that blotted out the sky, he gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Summon the flying mystic beasts. We're withdrawing." Mu Jilin's eyes widened. "But Patriarch, there are broken trees everywhere here, and the branches are intertwined. It's impossible for us to fly." Chapter 1131. We have to fly even if we can't. Mu Boming roared angrily and immediately summoned his flying steed. However, that big fellow bumped into a broken branch as soon as it came out. It flapped its wings twice but actually didn't fly up. Instead, it was scraped by all kinds of overgrown branches, almost falling crookedly into the zombie rat swarm and getting bitten by the rats. Mu Boming was so frightened that he promptly put away his flying mystic beast. His head was drenched in cold sweat as he shouted, "I really can't summon it. Family head Mu, if this continues, we'll quickly exhaust our physical strength and become the rat swarm's dinner," a middle-aged man said indifferently. He had a scholar's headscarf wrapped around his head, making him look rather scholarly. He held an iron dagger axe that was neither long nor short, but his movements were swift and decisive. With a swing of the dagger axe, he could get rid of a dozen or so large rats. "Your Excellency High Priest, then what method do you have to help us escape?" It turned out that after the Qin Estates people left, Mu Boming and Do Heping's teams encountered people from Siming Manor and Beijing Manor. This scholar was none other than Siming Manor's renowned High Priest. He was the one who had divined the abnormal changes in the heavens this time and then announced it to the world. A woman covered in a white veil stood next to the High Priest. She was Siming Manor's eldest heavenly daughter, and her entire body emitted an awe-inspiring and inviolable heavenly daughter aura. She couldn't help but furrow her curved brows at these filthy rats, and she grumpily said, "It's our bad luck to encounter you people." Previously, their two great manors' journey had been smooth and unhindered, but they didn't expect to encounter this rat swarm as soon as they encountered Do Heping and Mu Boming's group. They didn't even know if this rat swarm was charging at them. Mu Boming suffered in silence, but he didn't dare to offend the eldest heavenly daughter, so he could only turn around and look at the High Priest. "Your Excellency High Priest, how about we try a fire attack?" The High Priest shook his head. "Normal fire can't burn in this damp mystic beast forest at all. Unless there's a deep crater like the one we saw before caused by a large firearm explosion." Do Heping raised his head to look at Arbor, who was squatting on the tree branch, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Miss Chiao was sitting on a tree branch that was as thick as an arm. Beside her was a young and handsome man who was crouching, holding a phoenix egg. His two hands were holding a jar of plums and some unknown snacks, and he was feeding her. Qing Wan always felt that his little master was really miserable during this period of time. Being half-starved every day, he had lost a lot of weight. If her stomach didn't rumble, she wouldn't even remember to eat. If her stomach rumbled, she wouldn't even know to eat. The previous little master was someone who enjoyed delicacies and fruits every day. This period of time was really too miserable. Even if he ate something, it was like chewing wax. He couldn't taste anything at all. Taking advantage of the idle time, Qing Wan took out the snacks she had hidden and fed them to her little master. "Miss Chiao, you have a firearm on you, right?" Do Heping forcefully suppressed his belly full of irritation and tugged the corner of his mouth at Xiao Mu with a fake smile. There was no doubt that the crater caused by the large firearm explosion was definitely this Miss Chiao's doing. She was the only one who had a good relationship with that Duan family's young sir, so he might have given her the firearm. That's right, it was her. When we left the Mo Kingdom capital for the Mystic Realm. Chapter 1132. I saw it when the Duan family's Duanyu gave her a box of concealed weapons. Do Fengqi shouted agitatedly. Quickly take it out and throw it." Second young master Do furrowed his brows and forcefully tugged at his sister's arm. Do Fengyao couldn't resist snickering. "Are you on good terms with her? Why should she help you?" Do Fengqi angrily turned to glare at her. Shouldn't we help each other at a time like this and force these zombie rats to retreat first? Haha, I don't think Miss Chiao is a righteous person. Look at her squatting there. Does she have the slightest intention of helping us? In my opinion, it's completely hopeless. Qingluan, who was currently feeding the little girl, turned back to glance at them and chuckled. You two don't need to boast and sing to goad my little master into action. Because it's useless. Little master simply can't hear what you fools are saying. Do Fengqi was taken aback and glanced at Do Fengyao. Seeing the latter's flushed face, she realized that the cyan-clothed man had truly guessed Do Fengyao's thoughts. As it turned out, she was purposely cursing at her earlier to goad Arbor into action. The leader of Beijing Manor was called Xianyu, and she was supposedly the future young madam of Beijing Manor. She was in her early 20s and had a slender figure. Her looks could also be considered above average. At this time, she couldn't help but frown when she heard this. She turned to a maidservant beside her and said, "Who knows where that girl Baoyan ran off to? We should be more careful later and split up if there's a chance." "Yes, Mississippi," that maidservant nodded. Baoyan disappeared as soon as she entered the Mystic Beast Forest. Don't bother with her.
Our top priority is to escape first.
As she said this, she looked up at Arbor, who was watching from a branch and couldn't resist asking softly, "Miss, who is that person? Is it as family head Do said, that she has some large firearm on her? If so, why didn't she do anything when family head Do said that? She's truly ruthless." Xianyu shook her head. Although she didn't have much contact with this girl, judging from the tone the Do family and Mu family members spoke to her, their relationship didn't seem to be good. It was their business whether they wanted to help or not. How could they force it? At this time, a wave of strange movements suddenly struck. The group of corpse rats seemed to have gone mad, launching a more violent attack than before, desperately pouncing on the crowd. A portion of the zombie rats that had split off from the group of zombie rats even made a beeline for Xiaomu's tree and attacked its roots. Dozens of rats gnawed at the tree that Arbor was sitting on. The tree shook back and forth and looked like it was about to collapse. Arbor suddenly jumped up and took the profound artifact bow from his back. He shot several arrows in succession. Each arrow could almost penetrate 2 or 3 rats. The strength was very fierce. After killing that small group of blind rats that attacked her, Xiaomu flew up and landed on another tree. Unexpectedly, a slender and fair arm suddenly came out from behind the tree and grabbed her wrist. The aura coming from behind was very strong. With a slight twist, he grabbed Arbor's arm and jumped to the top of a tree. With his other hand, he pulled out a dagger and stabbed toward her neck artery. Miss Chiao was expressionless. However, the people below were extremely alarmed. That dagger was about to stab her, but Miss Chiao was indifferent. Chapter 1133. A gigantic long tail shot out from behind the person who had captured Xiao Mu and smashed straight at the attacker's back.
Bam!
A huge sound rang out. The Raksha princess raised her saber and killed a small rat that darted out from Arbor's neck. She picked up Arbor and swiftly leaped up, lightly jumping onto a nearby tree. As it turned out, she had stabbed a large rat beside Arbor's neck. Afterward, the Raksha princess actually turned around and smiled benevolently at Arbor. Anxious, Qingluan flew forward and angrily asked, "What are you doing?" Princess Luasha's lips curled up ever so slightly, and she smiled almost imperceptibly. She had concealed her aura and secretly followed Arbor, so she had long sensed her abnormality. This little fellow was like a clown, looking for places to cultivate everywhere. As long as she didn't reveal killing intent and didn't obstruct her cultivation, she could definitely become good friends with her. The reason why she was so ruthless to her in the beginning was most likely because she had stepped into her array when she was chasing Sikong Fuling and delayed her cultivation. This child was probably either dumb or stupid, the Raksha princess secretly thought. The Raksha princess snapped her fingers, and a huge wave of rats rushed toward Qingluan. Seeing that the two beasts of Arbor were surrounded by rats, a dark glint flitted across the Raksha princess's eyes. She directly pulled Arbor through the forest and headed in a predetermined direction. Qing Wan swept away a huge wave of rats with a slap and tucked the egg under her armpit with her left arm. She immediately darted up a tree and called out to Chirpy, who was happily beating the rats, and hurriedly chased after her master. Eggy, fuck, 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 Sir Chishue angrily roared. You damn green bird. Don't clip me.
Put me down. Aw.
This posture was simply humiliating the country and didn't have the slightest bit of a holy beast's dignity. Woo-woo. Freaking wait until I recover my true phoenix body. I'll destroy you in a matter of minutes. Qing Wan didn't care so much and directly scurried up Chirpy's mountain-like body with the egg. She anxiously pointed ahead. Hurry and chase. The fat squirrel took its chubby steps as it shuttled through the forest with great agility. At this moment, Princess Luosha brought Arbor to a place with dense mystic energy and pointed ahead. His meaning was very clear. Cultivate. When you reach a critical juncture in your cultivation, this old lady will take your dog life. What a joke. Of course, she had to get back at them. Could it be that he had given this wretched lass a beating for nothing? Moreover, she felt that the wretched girl must have some hidden secrets. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to be so strong that a single mental attack could make her flee in defeat. This wretched girl's current realm was at most at the 13th level, but her spiritual sense was several levels higher than his. That was why he was able to defeat her in one strike. Princess Luosha didn't believe that he didn't have any secrets. Xiaomu glanced at her surroundings. Needless to say, the place that Princess Luosha chose was really not bad. The mystic energy in the surroundings was even denser than the stream that Sikong Fuling found previously. Arbor nodded satisfactorily and pattered to the tree in front to sit down. As expected, he entered into a cultivation state, as though there was no one around. Princess Luosha was a little anxious, afraid that those cute little rats couldn't stop Arbor's beasts. Seeing that Arbor had closed his eyes to cultivate for a short while, she quietly approached and fished out a box of medicinal powder from her sleeve. Chapter 1134. She couldn't wait any longer. She seemed to have heard the beasts chasing after her. The Raksha princess's eyes flickered. One blue luan was enough to make her struggle, not to mention a fat squirrel whose level couldn't be determined. She definitely wasn't their match. Time was fleeting, so she had to grasp it well. The Raksha princess was just about to open the powder box and blow a mouthful of powder onto Arbor's little face. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and firmly grasped her wrist. The Raksha princess's eyes widened. It's you? As for the rats, they didn't retreat after Blue Luan and the other beasts left. Instead, they surrounded and tore at the humans even more fearlessly. The high priest of Siming Manor had an ugly expression on his face, and his fists that were pressed against the side of his robe clenched slightly. A metal spear picked up a dozen rats, and before the latter could approach, he activated a defensive barrier to reinforce his defenses. Then he shouted, "Everyone, let's fight and retreat at the same time. Let's see if we can leave this place." At this moment, many disciples of the Do and Mu families were already panicking. They saw several of their companions being dragged in and torn to pieces by the rats. The fear in their hearts was about to completely ignite.
Why?
At the last moment of their lives, they wanted ordinary disciples like them to protect those people in the center and use their own lives to protect them. They wanted their own lives too. Several disciples of the Do and Mu families completely lost their rationality in their panic and anger. They no longer listened to the Mu and Do family heads' commands and directly wanted to run away from the rat swarm. But as soon as they left the group, they were swallowed by the crazily surging rat swarm. Just as everyone was shrouded in despair, a dazzling and enchanting golden red light suddenly appeared above their heads, burning like a red sun. It directly crashed down from the sky above the forest, breaking through the heavy gray fog above the forest and the pitch-black mess of dead trees and broken branches. The dazzling red sun-like light just happened to crash into the zombie rat swarm, smashing a wheel-sized shallow hole in the muddy ground covered with rotten leaves. With such an impact, more than half of the zombie rats were blown away. The remaining 500 rats were like stray dogs, fleeing into the depths of the jungle in a panic. Don't chase. Mu Boming grabbed Mu Zijuan beside him and shook his head while panting. These should be mutated zombie rats. The remaining several hundred rats are nothing to be afraid of. After all, the combat power of these corpse rats was very weak, and a single slap could kill them. He was afraid that thousands of them would gather together. Even an elephant could be killed by a swarm of ants, not to mention so many mutant zombie rats. Do Heping also hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he turn his head to look at the person who had come. With one look, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Your Highness the Crown Prince? Everyone looked at the Crown Prince who had suddenly descended from the sky. Dumbfounded, he raised his head to look at the big hole above him, only to see a gray mist flowing out of the hole again. The gray fog above the mystic beast forest was poisonous, and it was impossible for any flying mystic beast to continue flying in this fog for more than 15 minutes. Yet the Crown Prince had directly flown in from the forest's periphery, breaking through the overgrown branches from above, and landed here. This kind of power was truly a bit savage. Have you seen the Crown Princess? Emolienne coldly swept her gaze over everyone as she asked. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.